This case has gotten people really divided. Now, let me know what you guys think when you hear about this, okay? Let me know what you guys think. One, you've got the video of the killer. Two, you've got audio. You can actually hear the potential killer's voice in that video. Three, there's matching ammo to the crime scene. Four, cell phone activity. We love cell phone activity, or, the lack thereof. Five, Google searches. People will be Googling, searching some weird stuff. Six, confessions to multiple people. Seven, multiple eyewitnesses that are placing you there and matching you to the suspect. Eight, you admit to being in the area when the murders happen. And then nine, phones, lots of knives, lots of multiple cell phones found at your home. And you're thinking, wow, case closed, done deal. Why are the people deliberating for so long? And that's why I'm here. I want to talk about the Delphi case. And, I want to know what your guys' thoughts on everything. Most of you guys may have already watched the coverage, or actually, I don't know. I feel like most people on my channel have not really seen the Delphi coverage. Maybe some of you guys have. People are deeply divided, whether it's if they think he's guilty, if they think he's innocent, whether or not they think he's been treated fairly or not, whether or not that the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard Allen did this. So I want to know what you guys think about this. The jury in this case have been deliberating for over 2 days now. And maybe things are just a lot more complicated than what you initially thought. There's a lot of perplexing information out there. For example, the girls that were found, one was nude. The other young lady, she was wearing her friend's clothes. Why would she be wearing that? The clothes were damp. The crime scene seemed very odd to a lot of people. People think that maybe it was staged. And, this trial is so wild that the jury has been sequestered. During the past month, they were brought from a different county about 90 miles away into Delphi, where the murders happened. And this is a very unusual thing, but the trial has been Monday to Saturdays. That is very tiresome. Monday to Saturdays, they have Sunday, I guess, presumably off, but any activity that the juror is doing, like during not court time, it's going to be monitored by the bailiff. I don't believe they have access to TV, to radio. I don't know if they even have internet access, but everything's being monitored by the bailiff in the room. And they are able to talk to their family or spend time with their family, I think maybe on certain days. But again, that is also monitored as well. Crazy. The Delphi stuff is crazy, guys. I'm telling you, it's crazy, but we're just at the very beginning of it. I want to do a brief overview of the Delphi case for those who are not familiar with it. It's going to be very short, and then we'll get into all the details. My goal for this video is to talk about the timeline as it was happening, as the investigation was unfolding, and then get into all the stuff that happened pre-trial, and then the trial stuff that's happening right now. And I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. There's a lot about this case. It's very dense. There's a lot of alternative theories, a lot of courtroom drama that happened, pre-trial stuff, in-trial stuff. So yes, this is going to be a long video, I think. I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty long. Have me in the background as you guys are multitasking, if you're driving or something like that. We'll have some images popping up just so you guys can get a familiarity of who's who. But there won't be too much of that, I don't think. And I think it's just gonna be a really straightforward video. So Delphi murders, for those who don't know, this is a case about two young girls that lost their lives at a very, very young age. We have Libby, who's on the left side. She's 14 years old. Her best friend, Abby, on the right side, 13 years old. And it's really sad because when you look at videos and pictures of these two girls, they're just normal teenagers. I noticed that they took a lot of videos. They did Snapchat, being silly. And I don't know. It's so sad to know that they would have been in their early 20s by now, could have been in college, had their entire lives ahead of them. Super sad to think about this. But both girls, they love pets, love animals. They love to play sports. And they just wanted to be adventurous the day that they were murdered. It was a spring break, I think. It was a Monday. Abby had just slept over at Libby's house and they had breakfast together. They were dropped off because they wanted to go to Monon High Trail to just do a little hike. Now, these girls, I'm saying, they are adventurous because if you guys ever seen pictures of the Monon High Bridge Trail, it is scary, okay? I did a video about this and we were looking at how high it was. So this is the town of Delphi, very, very small community. And you're thinking, well, why would they have two girls out there in the trail by themselves? It's because it is a small community. People trusted each other. You trusted your neighbors. You felt like your kids can go out running around playing and you felt it was really safe. And honestly, I think communities need to be more like that. I really do think that kids do thrive when they're out on their own, doing their own thing, maybe some supervision from far away or something like that. But it's good to be in a community where you trust your neighbors, where you don't think that, oh, my kids are going to get abducted or something bad's going to happen. I grew up like that. We had a lot of freedom, got to run around, got to explore, got to be very adventurous. It was really fun times. But, nowadays, just can't do that, right? It's a little bit scary out there. But just to give an overview, small town, people knew each other, and it wasn't normal to have these girls go out and do their own thing, you know? And so they were dropped off at the Monon High Bridge Trail, dropped off by, I think it was Libby's sister, Kelsey, who was a high schooler at the time. And it was spring break, you know. Around 1:49 was when these girls were dropped off in the afternoon, and possibly they were murdered about 50 minutes later. You're going to follow the police timeline. Now, the crazy thing about this case and how I initially heard about this was I was watching another true crime video, and it was about two girls who were by themselves, and they had actually caught their killer on video, but the case still remained unsolved for many years. Now, Libby had her phone with her, and it seems like maybe she had some weird inkling that there was a guy that was behind them. He was acting really weird and suspicious. Maybe she was trying to incognito record, and she was actually able to get like a little blip of him. His video, the face on there, his the way that he's walking, and possibly his voice as well. It is after this though where the camera video stops recording, and it seems like he's ordering them to go off the trails, like down below somewhere. And so the girls were supposed to be picked up by their father, by Libby's father, and Libby's father arrives at the park trail and notices the girls aren't there. So, you know, he looks around for a little bit, but he starts getting really concerned because this is not really usual for them to disappear like this. Libby's not answering her phone. And at some point, they call their family members, try to get people to come search. And law enforcement gets involved, and they have a search party that night. I think it was until maybe 2 a.m. or something that I heard. Now, they were unable to find the girls. It wasn't until the next day, I think a little bit afternoon, where they were able to locate the girls' bodies. And we get to hear testimony from the person that came upon the girls' bodies. And it was just it's really sad, I guess, because he was talking about how initially when he approached, he just thought they were just two little mannequins just out there. And then when he realized it was Abby and Libby, he had to essentially stand there and wait for law enforcement to come and process the crime scene. But he had to stand there, and he didn't even want to look at the two girls. You know, it's a very sad scene that you're stumbling upon. I want to I want to give you guys an idea of where we are, what area this is like, and how the terrain is, what the bridge looked like, and all the walkways. And I know I'm a very visual person, so I think it really helps to have a map to look at, and then we'll look at what the trail looked like, what the bridge looked like, and all those details. Because when we hear about eyewitnesses, it's going to be very important to know where everything was located. So let's start with this map here. I didn't make this map. Whoever made this map, shout out to Cheesecake Mafia. They made this map. I thought it was really helpful. And I also have a little mini map of my own that I built on top of this because I don't know how to edit someone else's map. But just an overview, we're in Indiana right now. And I was like, oh, you know, I wasn't actually too far away from this because I was in Chicago recently visiting my brother. And so we're in Indiana right now. Indianapolis is right here. Delphi, where's Delphi at? Oh, Delphi is up here. Okay. So Delphi is right up here. Small little town right here of Delphi. So here's the main town of Delphi. If you want to know where the trail was over here. So a lot of people would park at this parking lot right here. This is something called the Freedom Bridge, where you would walk across to actually get onto the trail. Freedom Bridge looks like, let me see. Oh, here it is. So shout out to Hidden True Crime. I've watched a lot of their videos about this case covering it. And here's them visiting the parking lot with the Freedom Bridge right there, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. That's the parking lot right there. This is where a lot of people would park in order to start on the trail. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going to be jumping around all these tabs. So when you park here, you walk over here, you cross the bridge, and this is where the trail starts, okay? So Abby and Libby, they were dropped off maybe around here. This is the Mears Farm entrance, I think it's called. So you can be parked right here. Sorry, you can be parked. Where's the other one? You can be parked around here and then walk. But I mean, if you didn't have a car and you wanted to like kind of get a little bit ahead on the trail, you can be right here as well. I think there was some parking there where people would get dropped off or they would just park there. So Abby and Libby were dropped off right here. And this is the entirety of the trail right here. Here's what the trail looks like. I mean, it's beautiful. Now, I think during that time, it was in February, so there were probably no leaves on the tree. It was probably really bare at the time. You wouldn't have this much foliage. But this is what the trail looks like, and it's beautiful. And you're walking through, you know, it's just concrete. I don't know if it was in this condition during that time. I don't know, they like paved it recently. And then at some point, you get to where Monon High Bridge is. And again, this is Hidden True Crimes video. Shout out to them. So there's a bridge right there. Now, this bridge does not look like this right now because, you know, they decided to fix the bridge up. It looked very scary. It looked very dangerous. This is what it looked like. So this is Delphi after dark. Now, I think this is a cool video to look at. I'll link all the videos below, by the way. Cool video to look at because you can see how quickly you can cross this bridge, whether or not you can like run through this bridge or if you're like walking carefully. But just look at that. That is high. There's no guardrails. As you're getting closer, the wood here looks so dilapidated and like, I don't know, man, because like you have termites in there, it might be like crunching, it might fall apart. I'm risk adverse, so when I see this, I'm like, oh hell no, like I'm too scared. So Libby and Abby, you know, them crossing this bridge, I think it's very, very brave. I am just not that adventurous. Maybe I would have been in my teens and early 20s, but not no more. So this is where Libby and Abby would have started crossing, and the bridge keeps going on even more. Here is the picture of the bridge. Here is another picture that I found that I thought looks really scary. Look how high up it is. There's a creek below, but oh man, this is scary. Super, super scary. See, there are some pieces there where there are like chunks missing. Like, oh, I don't know. That's so scary. Look at how high up you are. Now, just take notice at how high this is and whether or not, if you're looking down, could you see anything? I believe they estimated this bridge to be about 60 feet tall. Dude, that is so scary. But, you know, the guy who's walking across Delphi After Dark says that, you know, you can walk through this pretty quickly. Do you want to run, though? I don't think so, man, because, you know, you might trip and there's some, you know, pieces missing right there. But you could walk through this pretty quickly.
Little spots. Now.
Yeah, look at that piece of wood right there. Nope.
Right about in here. Okay, well, no, that wouldn't be it. Let's go a little closer. Okay.
All right, so this is just an idea for you guys to see what it looks like, how the bridge is, and the conditions and all that. Now, I want to go back to the map here. So again, the trail goes down here. That's where Abby and Libby would have been dropped off. The bridge is right here. This is where they're crossing right now. Now, if you notice, there is a creek here, and the bridge continues to go all the way down, I think a little bit more. And then this is like all like the wooded area right here. All the way down here, and then you notice there is a private road here. I believe it's a private road because it just leads to a house. This house will be important later on. And it would have been right around here where the girls would have encountered the bridge guy. Well, when the Snapchat video would have happened. It seems like maybe the bridge guy, we don't know when he started following them, but it would have been right around here. Now, here is the interesting thing. The girls' bodies weren't found initially right away because, well, they weren't found near the bridge. They weren't found near the trail, near the entrance or anything like that. It was actually across this creek here. And I don't really know how deep the creek would have been. I think I've heard it could have been like 3 inches to 3 feet tall. So they would have had to cross over here. And this is where the bodies of the girls were found. On the other side here, there's a cemetery. And just so you guys get an overview. So again, Abby and Libby would have been dropped off here. You go down here, there's a cemetery. You walk down to the wooded area. This is where their bodies were found. Now, I did mention in the beginning of this video that one of the girls was nude. Libby, the older girl, blonde, 14 years old, in case you guys forget, she was found completely nude. Abby, however, Abby was found wearing Libby's clothes. Now, Abby is significantly smaller, more petite than Libby. And the clothes that she was wearing was like very loose, very baggy on her. I don't know if it was like in a rush for her to get dressed or if someone dressed her. But Abby was found wearing Libby's clothes, which is really strange, extremely odd. And I have more notes about that. Not only that, the girls' clothes were also found somewhere along this creek. I'm not too sure where, but it was found tangled in like the branches. There's like trees here, you know, there's like some logs there, but it was found tangled. And among those lists of clothes, so we have a pair of Hollister jeans, size 26, inside and out, with pink undergarment on like the legs, as if you're like in a rush to take it off. I believe this would have been Abby's, with one Nike black shoe, white sole with the white whoosh sign as well, size 10. I'm assuming maybe Libby's. There's a white bandana type fabric, although the color has been disputed depending on who's reporting it. There's one pink footed sock. There is one tie-dye shirt, extra large, again, flipped inside out. So maybe you're in a rush to take off your clothes, or when you take off your clothes, sometimes it is just inside out, right? There's a black footy sock, and there is a one gray zip hoodie. Many people believe that's a very bizarre scene to stumble upon. Again, Abby's on the left side. Abby was wearing mostly Libby's clothes. I think she had her own clothes as well, but she was wearing Libby's blue sweatshirt. She was wearing Libby's jeans that are, of course, way too big for her. And Abby's configuration is very odd because, she's got the sweatshirt on. It seems like her hands were kind of like up like this. I think her hand was actually in her sleeve like this. I don't know if it was like she was kind of like in a fighting position or if she was like, maybe like held down or something. Not quite sure. And you could see that like one of her leg is bent. I think it's her right leg that's bent over the calf area. So it's a very odd position. Now, if you're wondering what the red lines are, they're actually sticks. So I don't know if the sticks actually look exactly like that, but I think they're doing their best to represent what it looked like because, we have some sticks that are laid across her. There are some sticks around her head. People theorize that maybe this is like a ritual killing. They're not quite sure. Maybe the sticks resemble runes from odinism. We'll get into a little bit into that later on. Maybe there are sticks on her head to resemble like antlers, a crown. And then as for Libby, also very odd as well, because Libby is unclothed. She's not wearing shoes, socks, anything like that at all. And Libby has one arm that's up with some sticks on top of her. Now there is a stick. This one, can you see my mouse? Oh, there's this stick right here. Apparently, I believe that's supposed to be a stick. That's supposed to be like a really large branch. I wish they made it bigger so they can show the sizes of this. I think they just wanted to show the symbols maybe. But there was a very large, thick branch that was like laying on top of her. And again, one of her arm is sticking up. Now, the thing is with Abby, they were able to find a shoe underneath her. It was below her, underneath her lower back. And in that shoe was the Harry Potter phone case that Libby had. I don't know if maybe the shoe was found like on top with like, maybe the phone was like semi inside of it, or if it was just like laying on top, like the sole was on top of it. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's possible that they were trying to hide the phone in the shoe and protect the shoe the best they can, but they were able to recover information from Libby's phone. Now, was it done in the best way? We'll get to the trial part and we'll definitely discuss that. But from that point on, they were able to get the video of Abby and Libby, during their last moments when they're crossing the bridge. And, actually, I should show you guys the picture. So before the girls took the Snapchat video, there's actually a picture that Libby took of Abby when she was on the bridge. Now, tell me if you guys think you see something in the background here. So here's the picture. And this is from Libby's Snapchat. So she takes a picture of the bridge, and then there's a picture of Abby here. Now, if you look really closely, does it look like there's someone back there? I can't really tell. Looks like it could be a shadow of some sort. Not really sure, but it looks like it's possible that there could have been someone there, maybe. Could that have possibly been Bridge Guy walking behind them at some point? Maybe. Law enforcement was able to, because when you're watching the video initially, apparently you don't even see the Bridge Guy, but they were able to enhance the video, maybe bump the contrast, sharpen it, and zoom in, make it larger to really show what Bridge Guy looks like. And so we see a possibly older gentleman, kind of like on the heavier side, wearing dark blue, red shirt maybe, or like a hoodie, blue jeans. I can't really tell the shoe. Maybe it's like a light colored brown shoe. Maybe it's just the light hitting it. He's wearing like either like, the cute little old man cap thing, or like he's wearing a beanie or maybe a regular hat. Maybe, I can't really tell. But he looks like he's pretty bundled up. Now, I did hear that the temperatures from this day was unusually pretty warm for February. It was actually quite a nice, beautiful day. It was a lot warmer. So him being this bundled up, I think, made people kind of suspicious. So at this point, a lot of tips are flooding in. People are calling in. The people that were there that day on the trail, they're calling in as well to self-report like, hey, I was there, I don't know if I saw anything, but, I'm here to talk to you guys, law enforcement. And one of the people that called in, I don't know if he called in or came to the sheriff's department. It was depending on who's reporting it. But one of the people that called in was Richard Allen. Richard Allen came and he was like, I was telling my wife that I was out on the trail that day and she thought maybe it was a good idea for me to come and talk to you guys. He met with a volunteer, Dan Doolin, or Captain Dan Doolin, who was a conservation officer at the time. Basically, they enforce laws on property. So like hunting, fishing, things like that. Those are the things that they enforce. And he met with Richard Allen. I think initially he was going to meet at Richard Allen's home, but Richard Allen's like, now let's go meet the grocery store parking lot. So they did a little mini interview in the car. It was a very short conversation. Richard Allen said that he basically, let's see, he was possibly on the trail from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. That time's going to be important. Remember that. Rick said, he went by Rick. He looked at, when he got to the trail, he was basically just like a little bit busy, didn't really pay attention to who was on the trail. He was too busy looking at the stock ticker. He was hoping to make money by, I guess, trading stocks or something like that. He said that he parked at an old farm building, although there is no old farm building in the area. It's possible that Richard Allen may have mistaken it for the old CPS building. Apparently, there's an old CPS building that was there that was abandoned. I don't know if at that point, if they'd already like tore it down. I know now it's torn down, but back then maybe it was just abandoned, not really quite sure. And so they got some little bit of information and they were able to get the MEID from Richard Allen's cell phone again, which can be really important. I think they couldn't find the, there's a different ID number they were looking for. They couldn't find it. So he was able to get the MEID instead. Did not specify what phone Richard Allen was using though. If it was like a smartphone, it was like, Apple. It was back in 2017. I don't know, people using flip phones maybe back then. I'm not really quite sure. But didn't specify what kind of phone it was. And so, like nothing really happens at this point. No one really, they don't really have anyone to, I think they have a lot of leads that they were looking into, different theories and stuff like that. People that were questioned. And at this point, the case goes cold for more than 5 years. More than 5 years. It wasn't until, before I get to that part. Now, during this time frame, though, law enforcement interviewed a lot of people. Okay, there was an issue where a lot of that data, a lot of the interviews that were recorded, got written over, which is a huge issue. And that didn't happen once, but it happened twice actually. So again, there was interviews that were recorded over. So there was huge issues with, it's like some tech glitch, some tech data stuff. I don't know, something happened. And the second time when it happened, they were able to recover the video, but not the audio. It's like, oh man, what's the point of the interrogation if you got the video but you don't got the audio? Like, no, I'd rather have the audio. So lots of issue there. There were some sketches that were released to the public. This is one that was released in 2017. So, kind of looks like Bridge Guy from the video. And I think like a couple years afterwards, they released this second sketch, which looks nothing like Bridge Guy or nothing like this guy here. This guy looks way younger. You can see his hair more. His face is like not like concealed by like facial hair, or there's no hat or anything like that. But the thing that was interesting was that they released this picture in 2019. This was actually drawn back in 2017, but they didn't release it until 2 years later. So it wasn't until 5 years later, we have a volunteer named Kathy Sharp. Kathy Sharp's been working the case again ever since back in 2017 when the murders happened, and she's still working on it. Basically, she comes in, she takes the tips, leads in, and then she like organizes them. She has like a whole file cabinet thing. And so it wasn't until like, I think like in the year like 2020, maybe she was like starting to digitize these and upload them to the system. And it wasn't until 2022, this was in September 21st. She said that she was going through, organizing the stuff. And then she realized that there was a tip sheet for Richard Allen that was marked clear. Now, I guess she was like looking at it and she thought it was really weird that it was marked clear because he had said that he was on the trail from 1:30 to 3:30 that time, which would have been the time frames that the girls were there, the time frame that the girls were possibly murdered. And so she thought it was weird that it was cleared. And not only that, but the name was written incorrectly. It was labeled as Richard Allen Whiteman. And she did some investigating and she realized, Whiteman is actually the road that he lives on. Whiteman is not his last name. So she decided to take this tip sheet and bring it over to, I believe his name is Liggett. I forgot his full name though. I'm going to just say Officer Liggett. So the interesting thing about Officer Liggett around this time, he was running for sheriff, I think. This was mentioned in the trial that like, you're running for sheriff. You had this election coming up, trying to nudge, like, were you just trying to get someone to be the Delphi murders guy just so you can kind of like win your election? I don't know, that's just something I just want to bring up, but take that information with whatever you want to do with it. And so she brings it over to Liggett, who was, the head of the investigation still around this time. And they were like, okay, let's look into this guy again. And that's what they did. So about 3 weeks later, they meet with Richard Allen on October 13th. This is an interview with Oh, my neighbor's dog's going crazy right now. It's an interview with Steve Mullen and Deputy Tony Leggett. This interview was recorded. We haven't seen it yet. It hasn't been released to the public, but they did play it in trial. So Richard Allen, he agreed to speak to law enforcement. He shows up at the police station, and Richard Allen was like, let me show you guys because I think it's best to have a little map here. So again, this is Delphi. Richard Allen's home is right here, Whiteman Drive. So this is where Richard Allen lives. You want to go to the Monon High Trail. Richard Allen would have taken, the fastest route would have been through the city. So Whiteman Drive is right there. So you can either go this way, get to Monon High, the parking lot that we're talking about. That's about 6 minutes long. You want to take this route. This route is about 7 minutes long. So you can take either route to go there, but 6 to 7 minutes. Richard Allen said that he most likely drove through the city. However, he could have taken the scenic route. And if you take the scenic route, I'm presuming it would have been through this way, through the country area, and then cut through all the way here. So, maybe he was a guy that likes drives. Maybe he wanted to avoid cameras. I don't know. We don't know. But I will say, though, if you're driving somewhere, wouldn't you want to drive in an area where there's a bunch of other cars as well? Right? Not in an area where if you were spotted, it's like you're the only car that was there. You're more memorable. So anyways, he said that he either drove through the city, again, would have been really fast, or the scenic route. There was a YouTuber who actually did this drive, and I can't find the video anymore. I'm sure I watched it on my other YouTube channel. So I don't know where the video is, but I think it would have been maybe roughly 20 minutes to do this drive, maybe more than that. So the scenic route would have been, you go this way, all the way down this way. And so none of these roads, I think these are all private roads. I don't know if they connect or not. No, I feel like you could have just gone this way. So I don't know. I think it was Gray Hughes Investigates, I think. So I think they drove all the way down this way and then up 450 up here. And then you take a left on West 300 North. Down here, and we're getting close to where the bridge entrance would have been. So let me go back to this map, it's easier to see. So again, Mr. Allen's house over here. Delphi bridge entrance would have been here. However, he wasn't really sure where he parked. Again, at this point, it's been 7 years. He did say he parked at the old farmer's building. That would have been somewhere right around here, but there is no old farmer's building. There's the old CPS building. So they think that he had mistaken it for this right here. So he could have possibly parked right there, but again, wasn't really super sure. Oh, hold on a second. Now I know why they think he took that long way instead of taking a shorter way. It's because Richard Allen said that if he did take the scenic route, 300 North would have been the way to go. So for Richard Allen's house to take 300 North, even if you took this shorter way right here, this North 625 West, you wouldn't be on 300 North. So, you'd barely be on 300 North to get to the old CPS building, maybe. But if you really want to take the scenic route with 300 North, you would have to go all the way down here. Because again, a lot of these roads here, they don't connect to the other side. You'd have to go all the way around here. And again, this is the route that I mentioned earlier, 450 North. And then this is a scenic route with 300 North. So again, taking a very long way, but some people just like to have those long drives when you're thinking and decompressing, right? All right, what else did Richard Allen said? Richard Allen said that day he was off work that day. His wife, Kathy, was also, she was at work. And so he visited his mom in the morning. And it was a really warm day. He came home to get a jacket, I guess. Why would you come home to get a jacket? It was a warm day, but maybe he just wants to button up a little bit more. And then he headed on to the trail. So he said roughly around 11:15, he left his mom's house, which is in the Peru area. I did look up where the Peru area was, and it seems pretty far. So again, Peru area, if it's even the right Peru area, somewhere, where the hell is Peru? Peru, where you at? Where you at, Peru? Peru, Indiana. I'm assuming it's somewhere, right up here. South Peru, maybe. I'm just making an assumption. I don't even know if that was even the right area that his mom was in, but that's the only Peru that I found. So, quite a drive, 50 minutes drive from Richard Allen's house to visit his mom. but I don't know if that's the right one. I could be incorrect. Maybe when he meant Peru, like if you're a local in this area, maybe you know where Peru is. He said he arrived at the trails maybe around 12-ish. He said he went there to watch fish. He said he saw 3 girls walking on the trail, but he was a little busy. He was looking at the stock ticker, wasn't really paying attention too much. And, it was really hard for him to say what time he arrived because he was like saying like, oh, maybe it was like 12, maybe it was like 1:30. But the officer was like, well, you did an interview in 2017 and you said you were there from 1:30 to 3:30. But, maybe there was some misinterpretation. Maybe there was some miscommunication. Maybe the officer was like, oh, were you on the trails 1:30 to 3:30? And maybe he meant that like, yeah, I was there around during that time, but maybe I wasn't there during that entirety of the time from 1:30 to 3:30. Maybe he arrived at like 2:30, So there could be some miscommunication. I wish, unfortunately, that first interview with Officer Doolin or Captain Dolan, that was not recorded. So this is why I think it's really important to have these recorded interviews, because sometimes when you're taking notes, you might take the wrong notes. You might have wrote it incorrectly. All right, so we have an issue with what time he arrived. And again, for him, it's been 7 years. He doesn't remember. But he said he started walking in the trail. He walked to the high bridge at the end, went to the first platform to look at fish, probably looked down to see if there's any fish there. And that was about it. They were like, well, what were you wearing that day? And he's like, well, oh gosh, I would have been wearing maybe a blue or a black, maybe a Carhartt jacket or, an off-brand. He would have had a skull cap, which I think, is that like a skull cap's like a beanie hoodie or some sort? I'm not sure what skull cap is. I'm assuming it's just like another word for hat. But he said that he probably would have usually kept it in his pocket. For shoes, he would have worn military-style boots or tennis shoes. And they're like, well, what car do you drive? And he's like, well, I normally drive my gray Ford 500, like I think an older vehicle. But he thinks he took his like 2016 black Ford Focus to the trail that day, possibly. And again, he reiterates that he told his wife he was on the trails that day. And the wife's like, oh my gosh, those girls were murdered. Like, call in and let them know that you were there. And that's what he did. However, during this interrogation, things start getting a little bit, they're amping it up a little bit. He starts getting agitated. They wanted to take a look at, I think, his phone. And so he was going to give him his phone. They wanted the passcode, but then he was like a little hesitant, because they wanted to take his phone. They wanted to extract it. And the phone that he had with him was actually not the 2017 phone that he had, but they were like, we can start with this one. We'll get the other one later. And so they asked for the passcode. He's like hesitating. And Richard Allen says, look, I'm not going to be somebody's fall guy. I don't want to be somebody's fall guy. Please don't think I'm questioning your integrity from this conversation. It's like, you think I did it. And then also, would you really want to hand your phone over to law enforcement? Have them give them access to all the stuff that you're looking at, and sometimes we search weird things, right? Do you really want law enforcement to have access to your phone? Because nowadays your phone is not just who you call anymore. It's everything. You do everything on your phone, right? You have your search history on there, the communications, there's a lot of stuff going on with your phone. Your phone is like your life. It's like your computer. So do you want law enforcement to have your phone? Probably not. And they show the picture of the bridge guy to Richard Allen, and they're like, the question needs to be, is that you? And Richard Allen's like, I don't know those girls. I feel like I'm being interrogated. They say either you were out there to do this to the girls or you were there to introduce these girls to someone. So this is back then when law enforcement thought this was like a multi-person crime, okay? They didn't think it was a one person that did this. They think it was many people that did it. And they're trying to say, oh, were you there to lure the girls? Richard Allen was like, we're done here. Arrest me or take me home. I'm done. And so the investigators are like, well, you're free to leave. You've been free to do that from the very beginning. And he's like, thank you. You're an asshole. He tells that to law enforcement as he's leaving. And so at this point, law enforcement, they drive Richard Allen back to his home and they drop him off there. They're not done yet though. They do show up a couple hours later with a search warrant and they search his property. And at this point, I believe law enforcement had already been talking to Richard Allen's neighbors, his family members. And, I think this is a different detective, Jerry Holman, sat in the car with Richard Allen as they were searching the property and was like, oh, if you're worried that they're going to damage your property, well, here's a, here's a property damage form you can fill out. And then, and Richard Allen saying, doesn't matter. It's over. And so he's like, oh, that's a weird statement to make. Okay, weird statement to make. Now, from the search warrant, what did they recover from Richard Allen's home? They found the Carhartt jacket. They found some boots. They found 6 knives, some box cutters. They did find some firearms. It was a 6-hour P226. They found a 40 caliber pistol, another one. They found 16 cell phones, ranging from smartphones to flip phones. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Why would you have that many cell phones? Oh, interesting. They found pagers. They found a photo album of, there was like a keepsake box that he had. And in it was a photo album. And the photo album had pictures from Richard Allen going to Monon High Bridge and some other pictures as well. Now, the other thing that was also in that keepsake was this ammo. It was a 40 caliber. What was it? Oh, it was a Winchester. Okay. It was a 40 caliber Smith & Winchester ammo. And this is the one that matched the crime scene. Now, the interesting thing is they found other ammo in his possession as well in his house. They also found a 40 caliber ammo blazer. However, the only ammo that was in that keepsake box was this Smith & Winchester ammo that was in, that box thing. So I was like, kind of weird. Like, does this ammo mean something to you? How come this ammo isn't found anywhere else in your house? I don't know. But I do want to mention that these type of ammo that they're finding, these are very common. And Indiana, there's people there that do a lot of hunting. People have firearms there. So it's not weird for people to possess firearms and to have ammo. But to me, it did strike as red flag, weird that one, he had 16 cell phones in his possession, some flip phones, smartphones. But, him having flip phones, it could just mean that he just keeps the phone. He's the type of person who just keeps the phone, doesn't sell it, doesn't trade it or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's not a big deal. They did not, though. They did not recover the 2017 phone. So that is kind of odd. It's very odd. So again, those are the two things that are really standing out in my head right now. They don't have the 2017 phone. However, they have all the other 16 phones. And then also, the only ammo that they found that matched the crime scene, the type, was not found anywhere else in his house. It was only found in this keepsake. So, these are things that are just, I'm just kind of as I'm following through this case, I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. This is kind of weird. And then we'll put it all into context with everything else later on. So again, guys, I don't want you guys to make up your mind yet, okay? But, just have your, just have your suspicions up, right? I do have a note here about the knives. I mean, is it really uncommon to have a lot of knives in your workshop area? Richard Allen is a fisherman. So I think fishermen, they use knives to cut the lines and all that stuff. So that's not really too odd to me. Now, they were unable to find the girl's DNA on any of Richard Allen's possessions. They didn't find his DNA or their DNA at his home. They found no ties between Richard Allen and the girls, no digital ties, he's following them on social media or anything like that. No ties whatsoever. But they do take the ammo, the firearm, and they do examine it. They send it off to the lab. And the conclusion from that, and put a little tab here, a little flag here, because we'll definitely revisit this again. But the lab found that, remember that one ammo, or it's called cartridge. Whenever I think of cartridge, I thought it was more than one ammo in a cartridge, but apparently not. Apparently that one ammo, if it's unspent, if it's unused, you call it a cartridge. And you don't call it a bullet because the bullet is part of the cartridge that is a projectile. So I will talk about the bullet or the cartridge anatomy later. But they found the cartridge that was in his keepsake box. Again, it was a Smith & Winchester 40 caliber that wasn't found anywhere else. It was only found in that keepsake box. And they found this was a match to the one at the crime scene. So apparently, whenever you fire a gun or whenever you eject it, there's these marks on there, and they were like, yeah, it matches. So again, they bring Richard Allen to come in. However, it's kind of like the Sarah Boone thing where it's like, hey, you're not a suspect or anything. We're not going to arrest you, but here, come on by. And so they told Richard Allen to come by, to have him pick up his stuff from the search, including picking up his vehicle as well. So he shows up and they're like, you're not arrested, but come into the interrogation room. Woo. What are we learning from all these? Do not talk to law enforcement without an attorney present. But I get it though. There are people out there that they want to be helpful. If you're like, I'm not guilty, I have nothing to hide, you talk to law enforcement. So Richard Allen goes in there and they clarify hey, do you loan your car to anyone? Nope. Do you loan your cars to anyone? Or your clothes to anyone? Nope. Do you loan your gun to anyone? Nope. And so they're like, well, We found the ammo at your house and it matches the one in the crime scene. And so apparently throughout this interview, he denies it like 25 times. He's like, no way, it's not my cartridge. There's no way it's mine. Quotes, I don't even know how my bullet would have gotten there. There's no way. I'm telling you, there's not. I did not murder 2 little girls. I'm not going to admit something that I had nothing to do with. I think nothing that you have is going to show me that I murdered 2 little girls. It's not possible. Detective's like, evidence doesn't lie. Richard Allen says it obviously does. Because, he's saying, I don't understand how this is this cartridge is a match. I think some of these quotes are out of order though. So they're like, are you a bridge guy? And Richard Allen says, if the picture's taken with the girl's camera, it's not me. Okay. Law enforcement says, I don't think you're a bad person. Neither does your wife. Richard Allen responds, what kind of good person would kill 2 people? Richard Allen says, I'm not going to be somebody's fall guy. I had 0 to do with it. You're not going to make me believe it's me. Arrest me or let me go. Now, I did jump a little bit out of order because I think he said a couple of times. Now, one of the law enforcement asked Richard Allen if he knew Ron Logan. Ron Logan is already deceased. I believe he passed away in 2022, but he's already deceased. Or was it 2020? 2020? 2020, 2022. But at this point, law enforcement, they think multiple people were part of this murder. And they're like, do you know Ron Logan? And they asked him if he was a mastermind. Richard Allen laughs at the mastermind and like ridiculous, right? And so basically asked if Richard Allen introduced the girls to somebody else. So it's kind of like, okay, well, we won't have you admit to the murders, but did you introduce them? Was this an accident? Maybe get them to admit to some of the smaller stuff. And again, Richard Allen vehemently denies, nope. None of this. Nope. And so remember when they did the search in his car and Richard Allen's in the vehicle with law enforcement and law enforcement's like, hey, if you're worried they're going to damage your property, here's a form you can fill out. And Richard Allen's like, it doesn't matter. It's already over. And so that was like ding, ding, ding for law enforcement. So they decided to ask him, so when you said that, what did you mean by that? And Richard Allen's like, it doesn't matter. It's over. The damage is already done. Everyone already thinks he did it. His life is ruined. And that makes sense. When you have this high profile case that has been unsolved for many years, 2 little girls died, and it's a small town, you got people investigating you, bringing up your name. Hey, what do you think about Richard Allen over there? Yeah, is he suspicious? You think he would do something like this? Huh. If you're the neighbors, you start talking. You're like, oh, so that guy, okay, they suspect him. Sheesh, I thought he was a good neighbor, but you know what? You never know with people nowadays. So to Richard Allen, he felt like his life was already over because people already had suspicions that it was him because law enforcement talked to them. And so his wife shows up at the police station and she's like frantic at this point, apparently. And she's like, how did the bullet get there? Like, how could this happen? And Richard Allen's like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain something that's not possible. And she says, they say they know it's you. So Richard Allen denies, and he's like talking to his wife. He's trying to coax her. I think at this point, though, he was really worried about his wife. She was also talking to law enforcement as well. And he told her to get an attorney, but not for him, to get an attorney for her. So that was something that was mentioned in the notes, and I thought was really interesting. And so at this point, it becomes like kind of like a shouting match. I don't know if it's like between Richard Allen and law enforcement. It seems like it was mostly one-sided from what I've heard reported. Law enforcement was saying that I was just trying to match his tone, so I started dropping F-bombs everywhere. And so here's what happens. Law enforcement says, you're going to drag your fucking wife and your daughter through this because you're too fucking bullheaded to get out in front of this and admit you made a mistake. So this is from Holman. Mr. Allen says, you're going to pay for what you did to my wife. So he's really upset because his wife is really upset. You want to fuck with me, but you leave my wife out of this. Fuck, leave me out of this. I'm done talking. Fucking arrest me. And they do arrest him. They arrest him on the spot. This is around October 26th. October 26th, he is arrested. They filed charges against him, the charges again were announced on October 31st on Halloween, 2022. So again, this is about 5+ years since the murders have happened, 5.5 years. And so things start getting a little bit even more crazier from here. Pretty fucking crazy, actually. You guys buckle up, get ready. And so Richard Allen gets booked. Oh, wait. So Richard Allen gets arrested and he sees a judge. However, I think his case was transferred over to it was kind of like pending another judge. And so during this time, he didn't have any public defenders assigned to him. No public defenders, no representation. And he was brought to Westville Correctional Facility, which is a prison, not a jail. Usually when you're in like pretrial stuff, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? They hold you at a jailhouse and you got a lot more freedom than you do when someone who's in prison, right? But he was brought over to a very high security prison, and it was because it was for a safekeeping order. They were afraid that Richard Allen might do something to harm himself, when you're being charged with murders of 2 girls. They were afraid of him harming himself. It was also a safekeeping order because they didn't want anyone to get to him, because they're with other inmates who are very dangerous as well. So let's bring him over to a, high security prison. And so Richard Allen writes this letter, and, I want to cover the letter because I want you guys to just take a look at the letter. Just look at the details of the letter. Just look at the letter. Maybe I'll just shut up and let you guys just look at it for yourself. We'll come back to the letter. This is the letter that Richard Allen writes, and this is what he says. In the cause listed above, I, Richard M. Allen, hereby throw myself at the mercy of the court. I am begging to be provided with legal assistance, a public defender, or whatever help is available. At my initial hearing on October 28, 2022, I asked to find representation for myself. However, at the time, I had no clue how expensive it would be to talk to someone. Yep, representation is very expensive. I also did not realize what my wife and I's immediate financial situation was going to be. We both have been forced to immediately abandon employment. Yeah, his wife, Kathy, they didn't want her to work there anymore, They're like, your husband is tied to this? Yeah, we don't want you here. I wonder, are they allowed to do that, though, actually? Very curious about that. Or maybe it's a small town thing, and it was like, maybe she was just getting, maybe they're just giving her the cold shoulder or something. And so he writes, we have both been forced to immediately abandon employment, myself due to incarceration, and my wife for her personal safety. She has had to abandon our house further for her own safety. Ah, okay. So for some reason I heard that like her job didn't want her anymore. Where was that at? Anyways, so it makes sense, they're scared for themselves. She had to abandon for her house for her own safety. What little reserve there is will fail to even maintain the original resident. I don't know. Oh, what little reserve there is will fail to even maintain the original residence. Again, I throw myself at the mercy of the court. Please provide me whatever assistance you may. Thank you for your time in this urgent matter. So Richard Allen gets transferred. He gets sent over to Westville Correctional Facility. And we're going to hear a lot about that. So in November, Richard Allen goes into Westville Correctional Facility, and when he comes in, he is been diagnosed with major depressive disorder. So they give him Prozac, and he's like doing okay. He seems stable. In February of 2023, so what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to go through the timeline of how things as they happen, interweaving some of the stuff that we found out from trial into that timeline. And then afterwards, we'll go to the pre-trial stuff as it's also happening, and we'll talk more about the trial stuff as well. So I think that's how I'm going to do this, all right? Hopefully it comes out okay. So Richard Allen goes in. He is given Prozac for a major depressive disorder. Now, a couple months after this, in 2023 now, this is February, Google turns over the search history. So the search histories, it's always incriminating, right? They always search things. Like, for example, we had Corey Richins, we had Brian Walsh, just not really good search history. Oh, Letitia Stout, don't forget about her. So let's see, what did Mr. Allen, what did he search? And instead of having me verbally just tell you guys, like I said, I'm a visual person. I feel like it'd be better if you guys just see the search history. Now, we don't know the exact dates. I wish I knew the exact dates, but these are search history. This is our searches from Google from the Richard Allen email, and they span from May of 2020 to October 2022. So why May 2020? Interesting. Maybe they didn't have his other email address before that. But October of 2022, God, because I feel like you would need during the time frame of when the murders happened. That would be more interesting, right? Or before the murders. So search history, May 2020 to October 2022. So that's when he was arrested. Google turns over search history by Richard Allen email. Man held hostage by teen. Okay. Movie about a man being held against his will. 65 plus best cat kidnapping and hostage movies ever made. Okay. Story about rebuilding Monon High Bridge. Shooting ranges near me. Should I die now? What's the most horrifying thing I can watch? What's the most insidious thing I can watch? Various searches for Delphi. Various Delphi murder updates. Delphi murders 1.2 million to restore jail. I don't know. So some of these are weird, maybe, but it seems like he was trying to search something about a man being held hostage and something with teenagers. Seems like it was like a movie. Maybe he likes watching horror movies. Maybe he likes watching kidnapping movies. I just don't think it's super incriminating at this point. We've got to remember, like Corey Richards, for example. What does she have for her searches? Corey Richards, remember the woman who is accused? Well, she's still on trial right now, but she's the woman who's accused of poisoning her husband with fentanyl. She has 3 kids with her husband, and she wrote a book basically helping her kids through grief. So here are her search histories. What is a lethal dose of fentanyl? Okay. Wondering why she wants to know that. Can cops force you to do a lie detector test? Luxury prisons for rich people in America. Death certificate still says pending. Will life insurance still pay? So your husband just passed away and you want to know if you get that life insurance money. If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on death certificate? Poisoned, as if you poisoned him? How to permanently delete information from an iPhone remotely. Oh gosh, not looking good. What about Brian Walsh? Brian Walsh is accused of murdering his wife, Anna Walsh. All right, we got lots of searches here. Actually, y'all just need to see this for yourself. How long before a body starts to smell? How to stop a body from decomposing? How to embalm a body? 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. How long for someone to be missing to inherit? Can you throw away body parts? What does formaldehyde do? What is DNA? How long does DNA last? So yeah, these are pretty bad. How to clean blood from a wood floor. Hacksaw best tool to dismember. Can you be charged with a murder without a body? You didn't find a body with broken teeth? Yeah. So Richard Allen's search histories are not as bad as these, but to some people, I mean, depending on as more information you're getting, as you're collecting more, information for contacts, it might look really bad. But so far, I'm like, okay, they're like, I don't know, it's not that bad. I mean, imagine like when you're searching things, right? You're like trying to look for a movie. It might sound weird. So what is Mr. Allen's time at Westville like? Well, Mr. Allen, he was put on S Watch, which is unaliving yourself. So he was put on S Watch. I'm going to call it that. They needed to keep him safe. He was in solitary confinement from general population. He was monitored by cameras 24/7. He had an S companion at the door. Now, the companions is kind of an interesting thing. They were inmates, actually. They would sit outside of Mr. Allen's door and they would write notes every 15 minutes, just to kind of observe Mr. Allen if he's saying anything. But at some point, though, they do change it to being correctional officers. Mr. Allen got to shower 3 times a week. He had 3 sets of clothing. He had access to tablets, so he was able to download music, to watch movies if he wanted to. Of course, it's not free. That costs money. He was able to call his family. He had 5 times at the rec room, but this is not being outdoors. The rec room is just another room that you're in. There's like a basketball hoop. There's a pull-up bar, and you do get to see, I think, the outside. It's like a little thing on the ceiling where it's like, I don't know. It's like you can kind of see outside, but you're not really outside. You might just get some a little bit of fresh air in, but I mean, you're not outside. I feel like you got to be outside. He also had a daily medical check. Now, at some point, Richard Allen decides to confess, and let's get into the confession part. So on March 5th, 2023, the warden received a form from Mr. Allen, and this is what it says. March 5th, 2023, received at 11:47. Richard Allen has his birth date, his information. I'm ready to officially confess. Killing Abby plus Libby. I'm assuming this is his signature right here. I hope I get the opportunity to tell the families I'm sorry. So that is what they receive. Now we're going to talk about this date because we're a little unsure if it's actually March 5th or is it April 5th. During this time, Richard Allen was speaking to his therapist, Dr. Walla. What's the difference between psychiatrist and psychologist again? I forgot. Can I just call her the therapist? Okay, so speaking to Dr. Walla and asked Dr. Walla, this was on maybe 2 weeks after the confession note, and asked if she believed in God, hoped that everyone would find God before they died, hoped that he can convince the families of Libby and Abby. He would go back and undo his actions if he could. Happier than ever, despite being in such a terrible place, religion was new to him. Asked for a Bible to see the chaplain. He slept with a Bible. He thought about feigning because, she thought that maybe he was feigning, his symptoms a little bit because he was drinking water out of the toilet. She wasn't really sure. So at some point, she noticed there was like some of a decline happening with Mr. Allen. She said that he was delirious from not eating. His emotions were labile, so they would go like up and down at some point. He was going off on tangents. However, he looked kind of normal. He would do this really intense stare, though, where he would just like stare at her. A couple days after this, on March 24th, 2023, an attorney meets with Richard Allen. This is attorney Andrew Baldwin, and he was giving Richard Allen some optimistic news about the case. Richard Allen was really thankful about the information. He himself was optimistic. He was very inquisitive, would ask questions. A couple days after this, Richard Allen was on the phone with his mom, Janice, and he says, "I did not accept God until 3/21/23. Not sure if wife sent him a Bible as he requested because it said the message on it. So apparently wife sent him a Bible, and because it didn't say like Bible, he was a little skeptical, like, oh, is this the Bible? I don't know. Does it sound like he's getting paranoid, or is he just generally just really curious about this? Now, on April 3rd, the next day, Mr. Allen receives legal mail. He got about maybe 400 pages of discovery. And apparently the warden said that he was really upset. He like ripped up the legal mail. He was cleaning his face in the toilet. He was defecating in his cell. And he was just not happy, if you want to put it lightly. Apparently he had a phone call with his mom and stepfather. He says he doesn't know how long he will remain lucid, that he's losing his mind. He professes his innocence, and that he said the prison conditions are like Guantanamo Bay. And he's been mentally tortured. But this phone call actually was not played for the jury. Okay, it was not played for the jury, so maybe I should have just read it. But oh well, I already read it. Now, I don't know if the phone call happened before or after when he got the legal mail, but this April 3rd date is going to be very, very important. The next day, or the same day, April 3rd, he has a phone call with his wife, Kathy. And this is how it goes. Richard Allen says, "I want to apologize to you. I did it." She responds, "No, you didn't." He says, "I don't know why." She says, "No, you didn't, dear. They messed up your meds or something. Why would you say that?" He says, "Because maybe I did. I think I did it." She says, "They're screwing with you. They're messing with your mind." He says, "Did Dad tell you I called? What did I say to him?" She says, "They're worried because they're concerned something's not right." He says, "I did it." She says, "Why say that?" He says, "Because I think I did. I wish I knew, but I don't know. I wish they would just kill me or let me apologize to the families." And so you guys got to remember, these videos, these audios, everything is not released to the public. This trial is not even public. So the tone that I'm reading it, I'm trying my best to, because I listen to like a bunch of other channels that cover this. So I'm trying my best to match their tone, and I think it's as similar as I can get, but hopefully one day we'll get all the recordings released to the public. We'll see. All right, so the next day, April 4th, attorney Andrew Baldwin again meets with Richard Allen. He noticed there was a steep decline in Richard Allen's demeanor, his ability to communicate, comprehend, and assist in the defense. It was a very different version than the Richard Allen that he's met in the last 5 months. He's saying that like Richard Allen looks like he has like psychotic symptoms, maybe like schizophrenic, maybe delusional. He said there was like some memory loss, inability to communicate rationally. So the next day, Richard Allen's defense team, they file an emergency motion to modify the safekeeping order. So again, the safekeeping order had Richard Allen isolated from the public, from everyone else. Now, during this time, they said that Richard Allen was being treated less favorably than a convicted person. Because again, when you're convicted, you're taken to prison. If you're waiting for pretrial stuff, you're usually in a jailhouse. He says the notes rapid deterioration physically and mentally. There's various psychotic symptoms, inability to communicate rationally. Once Richard Allen transferred to Cass County, which is across the street from one of the attorney's practice and about 20 minutes from the Carroll County Courthouse. It's more modern, it's more updated. And then also, there was an exhibit that the defense attorney gave to the judge, and it was like, this is Richard Allen. He came in, right? This is Richard Allen. This is what he probably looked like. This is Richard Allen now. And I was wondering, how did they get this picture of Richard Allen? Did the defense attorneys, did they take a picture of Richard Allen that day? It was like, something's like really off about him. I'm going to take a picture. So they gave a picture of Richard Allen, of how he, would normally look like and how he looks like right now. And they're saying, this is not the same Richard Allen. So that same day, we actually have notes from one of the guards. At this point, the inmates are no longer being his watch companion, no longer taking notes. It is going to be the prison guards now. We have conflicting stories of the reason why that switch was made. It was either because they want to make sure that Mr. Allen's discovery is protected, right? He's got his papers scattered everywhere. They want to make sure that information about the case doesn't get leaked out to the media, the world, the press. And so they decided to switch over to having the guards doing the watch companion and take notes instead. The other story was that, maybe the inmates that were doing the watch companions and the surrounding inmates who were within that same solitary confinement block as well, maybe they were yelling things at Richard Allen. Maybe they were, saying mean things to him. Maybe they're telling him that he's a child killer, things like that. So I'm not quite sure which is the correct story, but either one of those sounds plausible. Could be both. So Ethan Drang, one of the guards who testified in the case, asked Richard Allen. Richard Allen asked him if he wants to take a Bible. Richard Allen says, "Cure my depression. Allow me to find God." He's crying. He's screaming. "I've come to prison to cure my depression and anxiety. I hope I get the opportunity to tell the victims I'm sorry." That's Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen was crying, screaming in the cell. He was really emotional. At some point, he slips an envelope underneath to the guard, says that he wants to confess to killing Abby and Libby. Jury asks what the content was. The guard says it's a letter. And at this point, we're like, wait a second. This is April 5th. This is the same day as, the other one where there was a confession to the warden. That was on March 5th. So maybe the confession that was given to the warden, maybe it was actually April 5th, not March 5th. Maybe someone wrote the wrong date or someone purposely wrote the wrong date. The reason why this date's going to be very important is because did Richard Allen, did he go bizarre because he got the discovery, saw the contents of it, saw the crime scene photos, and then confessed based off that? Or did he confess before that happened? So that's why this date of when he submitted this confession letter, that's why it's contentious. But this guard who's testifying, said that an envelope was slipped to the door and he says he wants to confess. Instead of it was a letter. Maybe there were multiple letters. There's going to be some conflicting stories, so I'm going to do my best to try to present them all to you guys. All right. So we have the first confession of Richard Allen, the one that is detailed to Dr. Monica Walla. Again, Dr. Monica Walla was his therapist at the time. Actually, let me just look her up because I'm pretty sure. Dr. Monica Walla. Psychologist. Okay, she is a psychologist. Psychologist, yes. All right, so she's a psychologist. So at this time, Richard Allen was calm. She said that he did it in almost a straightforward manner. He says, "I killed Abby and Libby, committed the murders on my own, made sure they were dead because he did not want them to suffer. No one helped him. Knew they were dead before he left the scene." Richard Allen was very tearful. He says his intentions were sexual in nature. Thought the girls were like 18, 19, but could have been as young as 11. Said he's been selfish all his life. He's a coward. Took their lives to preserve his own. Wish he can go back and change his actions. Also said that he inappropriately touched his sister as a child. That he experimented with male and female children his age. That's when the problems began. He admitted to alcoholism since 2011, but said his wife cared for him. I also want to bring up during this time, whenever Richard Allen, so he's always under constant supervision, right? Whenever Richard Allen would go from one room to another, they would whip out the camcorder and they would start recording him. And so they're recording him as he's like walking around to different places. So we never get to see that. The jury never gets to see, we as in like, when I say we, I meant the people who attended the trial. They never got to see the camcorder footage. The jury did get to see it, but not the media. So at this point, there's like camcorder footages of him going in and out and his treatment. 2 days after the confession, we are now on April 7th. We have a new guard, Mike Clemens. Richard Allen says, "God, I'm so glad nobody gave up on me after I killed Abby and Libby." At 8 a.m., I, Richard M. Allen, killed Abby and Libby all by myself. Nobody helped me. 8:03 a.m. Inmates tell him to KYS. I'm not crazy. I'm only acting like I'm crazy. He also told the guard that he was God. April 7. Different guard. Dear Lord, forgive me for... I guess I'll show you this word. What do I say? M? Oh gosh, YouTube. For M, or inappropriate touching, it says M. I'll say M. For M, Abby, Libby, and Chris. I was like, who's Chris? 1 o'clock. Dear Lord, forgive me for M, Abby, Libby, Kevin, and Chris. 1:45 p.m. I want to confess I know a lot more. At 1:15, he was sitting in a corner. Then he was running in place naked. 1:28, he says, I will never again smoke in my life. 1:30, God, I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'll never smoke. Cheat on my wife again. I'm a Libra. We don't know when this happened. I have more notes about how Richard Allen asked for KFC. Said something about his grandpa M thinking him. Apparently, he was tapping his head on the wall until his head got really swollen. Again, another meeting with Dr. Walla. So 2 days after the big confession. So we're on April 7. Richard Allen said that he's aware that he's confessed. Doctor said, I told you to confess and that it was not in your best interest. It might be against the advice of your attorneys. That you really need to go and talk to them. She felt that he was maybe faking by being more blatant with his symptoms and that his behavior was really bizarre. Maybe that he was feigning memory loss. April 8th, the next day. Guard James Early. At 4:33, I'm ready to confess. I swear to God I killed Abby and Libby. Fuck you, Ryan. Who's Ryan? 2:29 p.m. Foxtrot. Fox Lady. Fox something, I don't know. Yelling, saying these things. 5:46 p.m. He was drinking toilet water, but it seems like maybe he took a breath before drinking the water, as if he was like trying to embrace himself. Something about a bottle of hot sauce and urinating on his sleeping mat. Now, I just want to say this. The guards, what training do they have in like the mental health capacity, right? Apparently, when you're a correctional facilities guard, you have a 2 months training. You do get a little bit of training in regards to mental health, but most of it is for de-escalation. So it's not like they have, extensive training in identifying whether or not someone's like faking something, but they're just making their observations and what they think based on the 2 months training they have and based on probably, personal experience. I also want to mention, so we talked about Richard Allen being in his like solitary confinement cell. Apparently the lights were on all the time, but you can maybe dim it a little bit. I wonder how dimmed it was. Was it like a good amount of dimming or like a tiny bit dim? Because if you're 24/7, you're being constantly watched by the cameras, you have someone outside your door reporting on everything you do, and the lights are like pretty much almost on, and you haven't really had human contact. And at this point, he was there for 5 months. So maybe he was going a little bit crazy, and maybe the discovery, seeing the pictures of the crime scene, maybe that's what pushed him over the edge. Now, what made this the crux of the state's argument, basically for the trial, they were like, Richard Allen confessed to details that only the killer would know. So remember that. Remember that part. April 9, James Miller. 6:58 a.m., I killed Abby and Libby. 7:04, the funniest joke is how I killed them. He started to shout foul words. I got what I deserve for what I did. I hope I burn in hell for what I did. I'm sorry for what I did. I don't care. Killing them. He was crying. 7:56 a.m. I only killed them to give my family more time to live, and I don't want to be free. Can't stop the bomb from ticking. My wife is dead because of what I did. 7:58 a.m. I'm sorry I killed those kids. 3:39 p.m. mumbling on the floor. 3:55 mumbling on the floor. 4:08 sitting on the floor. 6:46, I only killed them to give my family more time to live. I don't want them something blank. Not too sure what he said there. A lot of the times, the guards, the workers, the warden, the doctors, they said that Richard Allen was fine when he came in. He seemed like he was very respectful. He was quiet. Seemed like a very normal person. But it was during the time that he got his discovery where there was a major switch in him. They weren't sure if he was faking it, maybe for like, secondary gain. So maybe he wanted to get out of solitary. Maybe he wanted to see his wife. These were the things that were going on in their minds. They felt like, from one moment he would be crazy, and another moment he would be normal again. April 10. This is from Officer Raymond Smith. 2:50 a.m. singing God Bless America. 3:12, pleasuring himself in front of the door and sings, Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. 3:24 a.m. licked the window of the door and said, Kathy, I did it. I'm guilty. Run, Kathy, run. I'm guilty. 3:55, God Bless America. I'm guilty. 4:05, running in place and singing God Bless America. 4:50, I want to go camping. You, me, Roger, Marvin, Chris is my best friend. I killed those girls, so I have to. KMS. All right, Dr. Wall again on April 10. So again, we're only about 5 days from the major confession. Richard Allen's back was on the wall. He was raising his arms and lowering it. He wasn't responding to his name. There's papers all over the floor. Is this a discovery? Something with his genitalia, talking with his wife, and preoccupation with religion. April 12th, Dr. Walla again. Richard Allen banging head on the door, banging head on the walls, banging head on and kicking the door, pleasuring himself even though she was at the door. He was rolling around naked. He was looking at the camera in his cell. He refused to wear the, I think they call it the kimono thing, but it's not a kimono. And I feel like Japanese people are really offensive by that. But it looks like a robe type of thing that you wear when you're on S watch. He could not go to the rec room because he wasn't cooperating. She's suspicious that he's trying to get something but doesn't know what. April 13. All right, Dr. Walla. Richard Allen behavior was escalating. He was lying in his own feces, consuming it. There was a psychiatrist. So at this point, there's a psychiatrist who was giving him the meds, Dr. John Martin, and there's Dr. Monica Walla, who was a psychologist, and she was basically like his therapist. The psychiatrist would, pop in here and there, check on Richard Allen. I think we learned from the trial that the psychiatrist was really busy. He considers himself a workaholic. He's had extensive years in a correctional facility. However, he would visit Richard Allen every 3 months or something like that. It wasn't very often. But at this point, the doctor was called in because he had this emergency call. It was like, you need to come here right now. You need to come and take a look at Richard Allen. But this is from Dr. Walla's perspective. Okay. Now you guys have to remember Dr. Walla, because we're going to talk about Dr. Walla. So Dr. Walla is the one that he was giving those extensive confessions to with the details. All right. The psychiatrist, so that's Dr. Martin, offered him meds, but he refused it. Richard Allen was getting little to no sleep since April 4. Again, he's got his discovery around, was it like the 4th, 5th, 3rd? She was concerned that he's faking it, but it doesn't matter because he's deteriorating so badly. He's had an emotional breakdown, maybe to the discovery papers. Maybe it was guilt or loss, or again, maybe it's secondary gain. Maybe he's doing this for a reason. He was afraid to sleep because he didn't want to cause a nuclear war. So again, at this point, Dr. John Martin, this is the same day, he comes in, he's like, oh my God, Richard Allen is lying naked on the mattress. He's got feces all over him. He's got some brown fluid on his mouth, presumably consuming the feces. And he doesn't look so good. So they have this emergency meeting, and they decided, because he was not taking his medication, he wouldn't take medication that they wanted to give him. So they had an emergency meeting, and they decide to involuntarily give him Halidol, which is an antipsychotic. I want to make note that we're in April 14 now, so the day after the feces eating thing. Remember how his defense attorneys, they filed that motion for the safekeeping order? Filed the motion to remove him out of the safekeeping order, maybe to move him to a different facility that's better, that's closer to them. And she denies that. She denies the emergency motion for the safekeeping order. So at this point, Richard Allen is giving Halidol. These are injections. And, she's like, okay, well, maybe he's improving. Dr. Monica Walla, maybe he's improving. 3 days after getting the antipsychotic injections, we're on April 17th. His window was really greasy. His eyes were closed. His hand was raised like he was holding something. His lips were moving. Wouldn't respond to when they would call his name. He agreed to talk to Dr. Monica Walla. She said he was acting bizarre, and then she would realize that he stopped when she walked away. But here's the thing, when you're walking away from someone, are you really observing what they're doing? Like, how can you see, right? She said that he was saying that he had repeated nightmares. So again, maybe the discovery that people die because of his selfishness, that he lied so much that he's separate from reality. If he slept, then a nuclear war would start happening, and then he would start crying. The next day, April 18, guard Brandon Fisher notes. 8 p.m., Richard Allen banging head on door asking someone to read the Bible. 8:15, Richard Allen said, I killed Abby and Libby. April 20th, guard Brandon Fisher. 6:25, confessed to warden 2 times, and per management, he always says that. I think that's what Richard Allen said, that he confessed to the warden twice, and per management, he always says that. I think that's what he said, yeah. Now, his attorneys, they get to visit Richard Allen again. However, something's different, though. They came on, was it like the beginning of April, and they noticed a rapid deterioration, right? Put in that emergency motion. However, now when they came back to the prison, they noticed that, they weren't allowed to bring their cell phone in for the first time. Usually, they can bring their cell phone. The cell phone wasn't allowed to be brought in. Not only that, they were under constant surveillance by the correctional staff, okay? Usually, when you go visit your client, you're in a separate room with the client, you get to talk to them, and it's like attorney-client privilege conversation. The staff was like watching them the entire time. Not only that, they were videotaping the conference through a window. They were videotaping. That's so odd. And I'm thinking, were they not allowed to bring a cell phone because maybe the other time when they came in, they took a picture of Richard Allen to show, oh, this guy's deteriorating. He looks really bad. And so now they're not allowed to bring the cell phone in. And not only that, but their meeting is being videotaped. I don't know if there's any audio picking up because I think the videotape was through the other side of the window. Kind of weird. All right, same day, Richard Allen was saying strange things. His thoughts were disjointed. Dr. Wallace's point wasn't sure if he was competent enough to stand trial. However, she still believed that his behaviors were not genuine. April 22nd, guard Raymond Smith, 7:55, I killed 2 girls, so I have 2 KMS. Guard Michael Roberts on April 23rd at 2 p.m., I killed Abby and Libby. My wife wasn't involved. I like to confess. On April 25th, this is from Dr. Monica Walla. Richard Allen acknowledged mental health issues, but he's never experienced anything like this before. So he's like, maybe am I not taking the correct meds? Am I not taking my meds? He wanted to transfer. At this point, she's like, oh, secondary gain. He's trying to transfer, see? Or he wants visits with his wife. However, he finally was able to get visits with his wife. I guess he hasn't visited his wife in person in the past, 5-6 months now? And so Dr. Walla, this is not a normal thing that they allow, but she really pushed for this with the warden. I mean, it must be because she realized that he was really deteriorating. And so she pushed for the in-person visit, and they allowed the wife to come in. Same day, this is Dr. Martin, the psychiatrist, is notes, the one who prescribes the medication. April 25th, he said there was no feces smearing, that Richard Allen recognized the doctor, but not very communicative still. Richard Allen asked for his wife, the warden. He eats the meals. However, Dr. Martin was really concerned for his hygiene. Said that Richard Allen looked really sad. April 26th, guard Michael Roberts, 5:06 p.m. Can I talk? Can you listen? I killed Abby and Libby. 5:13. How do I prove that I'm insane? Around this time, on April 28th, the Judge Fran Gohl receives a letter from a Westville inmate alleging that Richard Allen has been abused and mistreated. This one, I mean, I feel like it's like, okay, information that I know about, all right, collect into my information receptor area. I don't really know what to make out of it, though. Apparently, this inmate wrote this letter to the judge saying, like, oh, he's being mistreated. These guards are not good. The state rebutted and said that, like, oh, this is a guy who's in jail for CP stuff. Or was it CP? Oh, no, it's a different guy. For, I think the same thing, like molestation or something like that. And this guy just wanted to cut his prison time. And he's always complaining about the jail, about the inmates, about the prison guards. Sorry about that. But I also want to note this, you guys. Apparently, this Westville Correctional Facility, I think they're like tearing it down. I don't think it exists right now, or it's not existing anymore. April 28th, Dr. Monica Walla said that Richard Allen was laying on the bed naked. She asked him to come out, said that but he said that he needs to shower first. So she's like, oh, maybe this is a positive sign because you actually care about your hygiene now. She talked to him about the visit with his wife. He complained about not getting food, but not getting water. Dr. Walla thinks that he is not psychotic, that he's doing for self-gain. He flushed a Bible down the toilet. April 29, guard Brendan Fisher, 6 p.m. I killed him in Delphi using a box cutter left in a box trash at CVS. 6:30. Continued to try to talk about Abby and Libby, try to R-word them, but got scared and killing them instead. 7:45. Lying down, then got up and took meds. So they're saying that these confessions that were made were only things that the killer would know. And again, I'm going to address it in a bit. May 1st. Guard James Earl, 8:50 a.m. Walking and mimicking early movements in the cell, said, I confess to the warning to Dr. Walla. 9:53, pacing the cell. 10:15, awake asking staff about World War III, deep sleep 10 minutes later. At this point, on May 2nd, Dr. John Martin, again, checks in on Mr. Richard Allen and says that there is no psychosis. Okay. Dr. Monica Walla said that Richard Allen said he killed Abby Libby, that he killed his family and a friend, and mentioned starting World War III. The same day, I killed Abby and Libby. I will kill everyone. I will wipe the whole world. I will start World War III. Oh, this is duplicate. Let me delete this row. Okay. Is it okay to KMS? Inmate said I should do so. Does that mean that inmate said that I should do so to make it right? I think to make it right. Should I do that? I don't want to die. Will climb to the sink and KMS. Killed entire family and best friend. Too much coward to KMS. Consuming feces, drinking toilet water because afraid wouldn't have water to drink. Oh, so he told Dr. Walla the reason why he was eating his feces was because he was afraid that he wouldn't have water to drink. Dr. Walla notes that he was suffering from brief psychotic disorder, that it was a situational psychosis, and in order for him to qualify for that, he must display one or more symptoms. 1, delusion or psychosis. She said that he wasn't experiencing either. 2, disorganized speech. She said yes. Disorganized behavior. She says yes. May 3rd. Again, met with Dr. Monica Walla. May 3rd. So we're about 1 month from the previous confession now, and before receiving the discovery and him kind of like acting up. All right, confession. Told Walla he tried to call his wife Kathy, but she didn't pick up. I guess at some point, all right, so he decides to confess to Dr. Walla again. Went to his mom's house near Peru in the morning, decided to not go to lunch with the family. Bought a 6-pack beer on the way home and drank 3. Decided not to go to lunch with family, okay? Then he bundled up and went to the Monon High Bridge Trail. He saw Abby and Libby, followed them to the bridge, did something with a gun that made the unspent cartridge come out. But I think when he mentioned this, though, I think he mentioned that he was like by the bridge area. We know that Abby and Libby, I'm probably trying to pull the map up. We know that Abby and Libby their bodies were not found at the bridge. So again, this is where the bridge is. This is where the bridge guy would have came across him, or the Snapchat video. This is where they were found. The unspent cartridge was found between the girls' bodies on the floor. So not near the bridge, but over here. So I don't know if he was trying to say that like he manipulated the gun at the bridge. That wouldn't be a detail that's consistent, right? His intention was to R the girls, but he saw a van nearby. It scared him. It stopped his plan. He told the girls to cross the creek. Oh, I don't know if he actually said that. So he didn't actually say that. That was like a testimony by law enforcement. Scratch that. It scared him. He stopped his plan. He cut Abby and Libby's neck, made sure they were dead, covered them with branches, and left to continue living his life. He was concerned about not getting food or water. He ate his feces because he was afraid of telling the truth. He wanted a wife to know that he loved her if he died and didn't want to miss Easter. He was also concerned about his property. He said that things were going missing, and Dr. Walla kept assuring him, no, it's not. We're not taking your stuff. At this point, he gets another visit from his attorneys. Attorney Rosie comes and visits Richard Allen. They are now placed in a small room. The officer forced Richard Allen to face a window facing the video camera operated by the guard. So again, they're in this room again. This time, the attorney and his staff, they're not allowed to bring their cell phones. In addition to that, they're also not allowed to bring their laptop as well. Usually they can. They can bring the cell phone, they can bring the laptop. But, ever since they put in that emergency, to get rid of that safekeeping order and to transfer Richard Allen, and that picture of him was taken and given to the judge, now he can't bring his cell phone. Now they can't bring their laptop. So it's like, I don't have my stuff to discuss discovery with my client. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't have my shit, right? So very frustrating. So they go in, and apparently, same thing. They're in this room. Richard Allen was forced to sit in this one chair that was facing the window where the guard was on the other side. And they had a video camera taping this attorney-client privilege conversation. Like I said, I don't know if any audio is picked up, but this was videotaped. That's really fucking weird. All right. On May 8th, Dr. John Martin, the guy who prescribed the medicine, said that Richard Allen was wearing his S gown, that he's had some sleep, but it seems like he looks really sad. The next day, May 9th, Dr. Monica Walla, Richard Allen says that he wants to sign his confessions. Dr. Walla told him to talk to his attorneys. Richard Allen talked about self-harm, that he wanted to plan his last meal, and he wanted to help others. He wanted to get a job, and that he was better off dead. She said that there was no psychotic symptoms. Oh, goody. Okay. Dr. Monica Walla. May 10. I'm organizing my notes as we're doing this. Dr. Monica Walla said that Richard Allen broke his tablet, so she arranged for him to get access to the phone so he can call to his wife. Apparently, when he called his wife, she left the room and then came back. Wife didn't pick up. Richard Allen says he wants to call the wife again. He told Dr. Walla, "I want you to hear this so you understand." Allen told the wife that he didn't believe she'd see him again, mentioning something about an electric chair, and I guess the wife hung up. Now, we find through a different testimony that this was the contents of the phone call. Richard Allen's call with his wife, Kathy. Richard Allen, "I need to tell you something. I need you to know I did this." His wife, "What? No, you didn't. There's no way. Dear, there's no way." Richard Allen, "I hope you still love me." Wife, "I do. You're not well. You need to say something. You don't need to say something you didn't do." Richard Allen, "I'm just trying to be at peace with things." He says to the Dr. Monica Walla, "She doesn't believe me. I didn't do everything I said I did, but I killed Abby and Libby." What does that mean? Again, this is later on, a phone call with his wife, Kathy. Richard Allen says, "I need to know if you still love me." Kathy, "Yes, dear." Sounds like she was maybe crying. Richard Allen, "I may spend the rest of my life here. I just got to know that everyone is still going to love me." Richard Allen, I did it, dear. I've got somebody here listening to me, dear. I killed Abby and Libby." Wife says, "No, you didn't. Stop saying that." May 11th, apparently he wanted closure by apologizing to the family. He wanted to see his wife and still needed to forgive himself. At this point, the defense team are like, "What the fuck is happening? What is going on?" So they, at this point, they've already had 2 visits with Richard Allen, and these are 2 different attorneys. They had a visit with Richard Allen. They're like, "Something is up with these visits, man. They're like taking away our electronics. I can't talk to my client properly about discovery. They're videotaping us. What is going on?" So May 17th, the defense, they put a temporary restraining order prohibiting Westville Department of Corrections to videotape the client-attorney meetings. The judge does grant this order, says that the court grants said order and herein directs Indiana Department of Corrections from videotaping any attorney-client conference and shall be afforded to use a laptop, computers, and cell phone. Very weird. Very weird. All right, same day. Here's the phone with Richard Allen talking to his mom, Janice. "I was worried you wouldn't love me because I said I did it, and I wouldn't tell you I did it if I didn't do it." Oh, apparently, this phone call, I think people were saying that he sounded lucid. He sounded very normal, very calm, and it wasn't like he was like blabbering. So this might be a phone call that would be very worrisome for the defense team because, the jury could look at this and be like, "Oh, maybe he was fine. I don't know." All right, so here's the transcription. Richard Allen. So I guess the mom says, let's see. So Rich Allen's point sounds really glum. The mom is trying to be really upbeat for him. And she asks him, how is he doing? He says, "I'm all right, I guess. Did Kathy tell you I did it? She says, we're not going to discuss this, okay? It's really quiet. Are you still here? Yeah, I'm still here. We love you regardless. Yes. Do you know if Kathy's okay? She's okay. We're holding each other up. I'm just worried you're not going to love the fact that I said I did it. Ricky, I know you're not in a good place right now. We'll always love you no matter what, but saying it doesn't mean you did it. Well, it does when I did it. Oh, they're messing with you. No, Mom, they're not. I love you. I know you don't have it in you to do something like that. Mom. And there's like a really long pause. I wouldn't sit here and tell you I did it if I didn't. Well, they're messing with your meds. Yeah, you would. If they're messing with your meds, yeah, you would. So if I did do it, you wouldn't love me anymore? I will always love you no matter what, okay? There's nothing you can do to make me stop loving you. Well, that's good to know. Have you gotten my letters? I don't get your mail anymore. I write you every day. Oh, great. That's something else I can share with my therapist. Oh, you're able to see her again? Are you seeing her every week? She's coming to see me every day. Okay, all right. I'll let you go. Tell everyone else I love them. And at some point, the phone clicks, and then he says, okay. So, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I like I said, I wish I can listen to these calls for myself. I'm only going off of what other people were saying, were reporting from the courtroom. All right. Apparently, the day after, Dr. John Martin said that there's no psychosis. Whoopity. The same day, the guard, Brandon Fisher, 8:45 p.m., Richard Allen says, I killed Abby and Libby. Apparently, Richard Allen had a small gash on his head from banging his head on the wall. The guard's like, he didn't do it that hard. But he probably just kept doing it over and over, constantly. May 30th, Dr. John Martin again. No evidence of psychosis, eating his meals. Everything is fine. June 5th, so about 2 months away from after getting his discovery. Apparently no psychosis. That's what they think. There's a phone call with his wife, Kathy. Richard Allen. I feel like I lost my mind and gone to hell. She says, we're all living it right now. Richard says, you know I done it, right? She says, I don't want to tell you about that, okay? June 11th, a couple days afterwards, phone call with his wife, Kathy. Richard Allen. I did it. Long pause. Are you still there? Yes, dear, but you didn't do it. Why would you say that? Why do you say that? I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel I lost my mind. Honey, you can't call me and talk like this. I'm scared, baby. I can't talk to you right now. I'm probably going to have to KMS. I guess I'm going to have to stop calling. I'm sorry. You can't call me if you're going to talk like that. June 18. Guard Michael Roberts, 3:30 p.m. notes. He says, or Richard Allen says, why are you doing this to me? Do you know, God, why I'm here? I killed Abby and Libby. On June 20th. So again, Dr. John Martin is like, oh, well, so no sign of psychosis. Let's now stop the meds. I think, how long has it been since there's no psychosis? Maybe a couple weeks now? It's been a couple weeks now, and now they are stopping the Halidol, the involuntary injections of Halidol. All right. He said that Richard Allen's speech is coherent, no hallucinations, and that Richard Allen would like to apologize to the family members. However, this is June 20th, okay? June 20th. Wait, am I on June 20th? Yes, okay. June 20th, they played a video in court, and the video, it's about 8 minutes long. Richard Allen's like in a medical room. I think they're like taking his oh, fuck, the word escapes me. What is it called when you go to the doctor's office and they're like taking your blood pressure and all that stuff? I think they're doing that. And so apparently he's like strapped to a chair. He's in like cuffs. And he's got like this like vacant stare. He's just like staring off into the distance. There's like a couple guards around him. The doctor's like talking to him. And he's just like, apparently from what people are describing in this video, he just seems catatonic. He's not responsive to anything. He's just staring. The doctor's like palpating his stomach, seeing if he's okay. Yeah, and at some point, at some point, I think his head like falls like over. It's just the same day. I think his head falls over and the guard like tries to like keep his head up and then like holds on his shoulder so he like stays up, but he's just like staring off. And this is the day where the doctor is like, yeah, he's fine now. He's not psychosis. You know, there's no evidence of psychosis. He's coherent. You know, he's fine. Now, I want to go to the trial really quick. Apparently, when the doctor was under direct examination by the state, she asked him, anything you saw in the video about Rick being psychotic, does it change your mind? He's like, no. In cross-examination, does that video perhaps makes you want to change your diagnosis of what you saw that day? Yes. Okay, that's conflicting answers. And redirect, when you look at that video, does he look psychotic? No. Yeah, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. But we have to experience the trial in order to really see this. Now, by the way, there was a jury question. So the cool thing about this trial is the jury can ask questions after the witnesses testify. The jury asked a question, can you be in and out of psychosis in a 24-hour period? And he's like, yeah. So is it possible that Richard Allen was in and out of psychosis during this time? Maybe at one point he seemed okay, and at some point he'll be back in psychosis again. All right. Oh, so even though Richard Allen was not getting these involuntary Haldol shots anymore, they were still giving him like an oral dose of it. Now, I do have a note for the exact same day, and I don't remember if it was from, I think, Dr. Walla. Apparently, she met outside with him, outside of the cell. It wasn't recorded, though. It doesn't remember this was recorded, which is weird because like, oh, I thought you guys recorded him every time he goes in and out of his cell with the handheld camcorder. Isn't he always recorded? Apparently she said that he was having conversation with her outside of the cell and that he was really communicative. She said that his video was very different than how he was in that video where he was just sitting there gazing into nothing. But is that true? One, or two, was he going in and out of psychosis? June 21st, the next day, the guard, Michael Roberts, 3:15, Richard Allen says, do I make you mad? Should I tell you about my wife? I killed Abby and Libby. All right, so this is the judge, because we got to include the judge stuff. The judge stuff is pretty wild as well. Got to include the judge stuff. Why did I copy and paste this? This is in regards to the safekeeping order. Okay, so again, the judge, remember, she denied the emergency motion for the safekeeping order and had Richard Allen transferred. This is what she wrote. It is very interesting. Judge Frengel, the court having this matter under advisement following a hearing and having considered the evidence and arguments of counsel now finds as follow. Defendant is currently incarcerated at Westville Correctional Facility under safekeeping order issued November 3rd, 2022. The court order states that the court finds the defendant is an inmate awaiting trial and is in imminent danger of seriously bodily injury or death, or represents a substantial threat to the safety of others. The evidence presented at the hearing on defendant's motion to reconsider did not support many of the allegations advanced by defendant counsel. In fact, the evidence presented demonstrated the defendant is treated more favorably than other inmates housed at Westville Correctional Facility. In light of the evidence presented, the court has reconsidered the original safekeeping order and finds it reasonable and necessary to ensure the defendant's safety and to prevent serious bodily injury to himself. The Department of Correction has provided and will continue to provide defendant with necessary medical services, including any mental health services. The Department of Correction believes a facility other than Westville is more appropriate or more convenient for counsel. The court is confident that the Department of Correction will move the defendant accordingly. All right. We're in August now. So at this point, the defense was able to get Dr. Polly Westcott to come and meet with Richard Allen for the first time. I think she interviewed him and she did some tests on him, basically trying to see is whether or not he's got a serious mental condition, if he's suffering from psychosis, if he's being delusional. Apparently on August 3rd, so this is, I don't know when he met with Dr. Polly Westcott. I don't know if it was in August somewhere. I just don't know when in August. It wasn't specified. Richard Allen says, I want to go to heaven. I couldn't contact wife. Wanted to talk to her to see he wanted to see his family. He's afraid of dying. Doesn't feel well. Feels like heart will quit. Afraid something would happen to him. He didn't want to die. He's confused. Didn't know what was rational anymore. Not sure if he's going to heaven. September 18, at this point, defense team files a motion for a Franks hearing in support of the previous filed motion to suppress. Includes a 136-page memorandum. I was in the middle of reading that. I think I got probably a fourth of the way through. Lots of crazy stuff in there. It's going to include the other theories that the defense has as to who they think did this murder at Abby and Libby. Now, this was a quote that was mentioned. I think it's kind of interesting. Alleged prison guards at Westville Correctional Facility allowed to wear patches on official uniform supporting odinism. Crime scene photos suggested potential connection to odinism, which is a Nordic religion and or cult that has been associated with both prison system and in society in general with white supremacy. So, the other theory, remember with all the sticks that we talked about? The other theories was that maybe these were people that were into odinism, where they practiced this. They decided to sacrifice Abby and Libby. They said, put the sticks on there. Maybe it resembles runes. Maybe there's the blood patterns that resembles potential runes as well. Apparently there was a letter that was on the tree. It was really hard to see though. So they're like, hey, something weird is happening. And then not only that, there are people that are working at the correctional facility that have contact with Richard Allen, and they're wearing these patches of, that has odinism symbolism on there. There's tattoos, jewelry. I think they saw their Facebook page and saw that they were a part of this odinism thing. We're in October 10 now. Okay, October 10. Oh, the state responds to the defense, saying that it is a colorful and a dramatic request from the defense. It is not correct. There's no threat to Richard Allen in Westville Correctional Facility. Apparently, the warden signed an affidavit basically acknowledging that officers within the facilities did wear Odin patches. That the officers have not worn them since being told not to wear them. He also acknowledged that there was inmates that practice Odinism, but none have direct contacts with Richard Allen. Okay, but maybe the guards do, right? The guards do. 2 officers named by the defense say that they never harassed Richard Allen or had one-on-one interactions with Richard Allen, taking their word for it, right? Neither had conversations with Richard Allen that were recorded. Now, October 19, things get even more crazy, and this is outside of the correctional facility. So October 19, again, Richard Allen has been locked up for 11 months now, been in solitary confinement. At this point, it's been 11 months? Yeah, 11 months in solitary confinement, and the judge allows cameras in court. It's like, oh, wow. Yay, we're going to have cameras in court. Okay, that's great. So the judge allows for cameras to be in court for the first time, and all the media is there. However, she tells the defense team, hey, I want to meet before the hearing starts. I want to talk to you guys. And so apparently she tells them, hey, you guys either withdraw, or when we go out there in the open court, I'm going to dismiss you guys from the case in front of everybody. And so they're conflicted. They're like, well, we don't want to withdraw from this case. And so apparently, I don't know if you guys remember the news about the Delphi and the leak of the crime scene photos. Apparently, there was a former employee and was a close associate to one of the attorneys. He took pictures of the crime scene. He leaked it. And apparently, these photos were sent to another podcast called The Murder Sheet. And they're like, this is under seal. So they contacted the defense team. They contacted law enforcement, as they should. And there was an investigation that begun about these leaked crime scene photos. And so when the judge heard about this, the judge said that this was gross negligence, and she wants to have the attorney to withdraw now, or she would dismiss him publicly in front of everyone there with all the cameras there. So the attorneys, I think one of them withdrew, and then the other one said he was going to do a written order to withdraw. And at this point, a couple days afterwards, Mr. Allen was appointed new attorneys to represent him. So we have attorneys Robert Scremin and William Labrato. They were appointed to represent Richard Allen due to the withdrawal of attorneys Baldwin and Rossi. And of course, the attorneys are like, this is a course withdrawal. We didn't want to withdraw, but the judge made us, The judge made us.
Ladies and gentlemen, earlier this afternoon, the defense attorneys have withdrawn their representation of Mr. Allen. Mr. Baldwin made an oral motion to withdraw. I granted that oral motion to withdraw, and Mr. Rossi will be submitting a written motion to withdraw. I'm assuming within the next couple of days. They have confirmed with the court that Mr. Allen's financial situation remains static, meaning he is continuing to be entitled to appointed counsel. I will reach out to public defenders to make that appointment. As Mr. Allen is now without counsel, I've ordered him transported back to the Department of Correction. Mr. McClellan, I know that we have already scheduled a hearing in the Carroll Circuit Court October 31st at 9 a.m. I'd like to maintain that hearing if we can, please. I think at that point we
Here's the state prosecutors.
can have counsel appointed. I'd like to set a new trial date. Obviously, I don't believe counsel will be prepared within the next couple of months.
Yeah, McClellan kind of looks like Gary Oldman, right? The guy from Fifth Element, the villain guy. Got the hair. I mean, it's not a bad compliment. It's not a bad compliment.
To try a case of this magnitude in January. So we'll set dates for the trial. I think we need to set a date as well for the suppression hearing that was filed now by former counsel. I have asked the attorneys to provide all of the discovery previously provided back to the state of Indiana. I know I entered a protective order on the discovery, and honestly, I don't remember when that was. I think it was in April of this year, perhaps, maybe sooner. But the attorneys have been ordered to provide all of that discovery back to the state. And if you would maintain that until such time as it can be turned over to successor counsel, I would appreciate that, Mr. McClellan. I've also asked the defense attorneys to cooperate with successor counsel. They're not required to do that, but I think that they will in the best interests of Mr. Allen. They're not required to provide any of their work product, but they will be required and have indicated that they will cooperate with successor counsel. So obviously, without counsel, Mr. Allen's hearing cannot proceed. I apologize that I know many of you have been waiting for several hours. I know, Mr. McClellan, you and your staff, and you had some witnesses here that came earlier to have the hearing, but clearly this is outside of our control. So
This is crazy. This is what we could have been watching right now. This is what we could be watching had she allowed cameras in the courtroom for everyone to watch. Look at the quality of this. Look at the audio. Look how beautiful it looks. Look at the colors here. Beautiful. But nope, we didn't get it.
is there anything, Mr. McClellan, that you'd like to state for the record?
No, Your Honor, I think we can address the other issues at the October 31st court date.
All right.
All right. So the defense attorneys, they did not want to withdraw. They felt like they were forced to withdraw by the judge. They felt like the photos being leaked was not their fault. You know, there was someone who was at their office, a former employee, came in, took pictures, and disseminated it. Now, apparently that person, when the investigation started into what he did, he apparently unalived himself. So, yeah. Yep. Woo. Yeah, crazy stuff, this case. Crazy stuff. Mr. Richard Allen also did not want his attorneys to withdraw. He wrote a letter to the judge, like asking, like, please don't let my, attorneys withdraw. I want to keep them. I want to keep on the case. But, the attorneys, at least one of them felt like, they had to withdraw because the judge was going to publicly, I think he said, like, publicly shame them and dismiss them in front of everybody with the camera and the cameras there. And then the other attorney was like, okay, well, I won't withdraw now. I'll just do it in writing later on then. So that's what happened. So, November 19, 2023, the attorneys Scrumman and Librato, they visit Richard Allen in Westville. And they're like, I've never seen anything like this. Mr. Richard Allen looked like he was treated like Hannibal Lecter. The guards were watching them through a glass panel. The door was ajar, so maybe they can hear what was being said. Believe that Richard Allen was intimidated, that he wasn't allowed to speak freely. Again, these are new set of attorneys that are working with Richard Allen, not the former attorneys. These are new court-appointed attorneys, okay? He said that one guard had like maybe a symbolic face tattoo of Odin's spear. He had multiple hand and finger tattoos resembling odinism and Norse mythology. Apparently they looked up this guard's Facebook profile and there was Thor's hammer inscribed. He had a necklace wearing Thor's hammer inscribed BRSRCS. I think it means berserker, which is a Norse battle axe name given to warriors fighting in honor of Odin. Other photos were displaying there was like some interlocking triangles that represented Odinism. So like going through his like Facebook profile. Think what's up? Richard Allen told attorneys that guards were intimidating and they were reluctant to provide him with shower or rec access because it required extra work for them. So he simply just remains in the cell without rec time or showering so he can keep the peace. That's what he says. All right, so remember how they wanted to transfer, Mr. Richard Allen outside of Westville? And they're like, yeah, bring him over to, I forgot what's the name of the other one that they wanted to bring him over to, but it was like a lot closer. Instead, they transferred him over to Wabash Valley Correctional. Okay, well, what's the issue with that? Wabash Valley Correctional. So Westville was already like, I think, an hour and a half away from Delphi. Wabash, 2 hours and 44 minutes away. That is quite a hike. Now, do we think that the conditions are better? Nope, he got thrown into another 8x12 cell. Again, like solitary confinement, no contact with anyone, similar conditions. Now, his attorneys did not approve this. I'm not really quite sure why they took him to Wabash. So on December of 22, so a couple days before Christmas, December 22nd, we're in 2003 still, new attorneys, they go to visit Mr. Richard Allen in the new facility, Wabash. And the new attorneys are like, this is far. They were 233 miles away from the facility. You're meeting with a client who's accused of murdering 2 little girls. All right, so they said that this visit to Richard Allen was a 10-hour day. They said they had to speak to Richard Allen through an iron flap that was like perked open, on the door. They were sitting at a folding table 6 feet away from the door. They were not allowed to come within 6 feet of Richard Allen. So it's like, how are you supposed to discuss the case with him? They were unable to show videos or documents because, again, they couldn't come within 6 feet of him. And they weren't able to discuss the case without shouting at each other. They were like, what the fuck is this? Now, apparently, 2024, in January 12th, the attorneys, Scrumman and Labrado, they put in a motion for a transfer. And should we read the whole thing? I'll read snippets of it. In 25 years of practicing law in 25 states, I've never had a conduct in custody legal consultation in this fashion. The prison's visitation arrangement created in this an environment wherein effectively representing Mr. Allen was fiction. Never before were guards present during consults, never audio or video equipment recording, clients never shackled, handcuffed, or chained during the visits. Yeah, very odd stuff. Very odd. And the new attorney's like, what the heck is going on here? On January 19, there was an order issued from the Indiana Supreme Court. Ooh. So remember how the attorneys were basically forced to withdraw because of the leaked photos? Now, the Indiana Supreme Court, they overturned the judge's decision. So now she has to reinstate the 2 attorneys and let them represent Richard Allen. A month after that, we have February 4th. There is a Jason Bedwell, who is the Wabash Valley Correctional officer. So he says that Richard Allen transferred, over to Wabash. He's been there for a couple months now. And that Richard Allen was lying down. He was crying. He was talking to himself. He was saying, I'm sorry for what I did. Sorry for killing them. I don't know if Mr. Allen was still on Haldol. I also do know that he was still in solitary confinement. And I think when they had these officers, I think when they had this officer testify, it was like, yeah, the conditions were still the same at Westville. It's like, ooh, is that a good thing? Is it a good thing that the conditions are still the same? All right. Where are we now? Okay. We're getting close to the trial now, y'all. We're getting close to the trial. So, oh wait, I think I have my timeline. Yeah, my timeline's jacked up. What is this? What is this doing up here? Let me move some stuff around. Give me a second. There must have been lots of drama between the judge and the defense attorneys at this point. Now, May 1st, 2024, Judge Fran Gall calls defense counsel sloppy, negligent, incompetent, but said the state did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that defense's conduct was willful and intentional. The defense will not be held in contempt. Wow. Sloppy, negligent, incompetent. That's on the court's website when you look up this case, and it's for everyone to see, the world to see. She wrote this whole thing out. All right, May 8. Defense, petition to strike gratuitous and demeaning commentary and or findings from the contempt order. So they want the judge to have, they said it was too gratuitous and it was demeaning. They have a petition to strike that. On May 17, Defense counsel, they had a second verified motion to disqualify the judge. All right, thinking the judge is being too biased. All right, we get a long response from the judge. I don't think I'm going to read that because there's a lot of accusations thrown at the judge. The judge goes through and addresses it all. This was replied back on June 3rd. I'm not going to read it, but it's on the case, the website, because she goes through a lot of stuff that like we're not really familiar with because, you know, a lot of this stuff was sealed at the time. I think at some point they decided to like floodgate a bunch of documents out to the public, but it's like a huge mess, all out of order. It's crazy. I don't know. The dates are all wrong. It's labeled incorrectly. I don't know. It's fucking weird. Weird. All right. So we are at where we are right now. We're in August of 2024. And oh boy. All right. So the detectives, they said they went back and they took a look at Richard Allen's confession that he made to Dr. Walla. And they were like, oh, well, Richard Allen mentioned that there was a white van driving by. It interrupted him. And that's when he decided to change his mind about R-wording the girls. And he decided to kill them instead. And so it wasn't until over a year plus later, before the trial's about to start, I guess the investigators realized, like, oh, like, let's go find this van. Apparently, Brad Weber lives near the bridge. I think he owns the property where the girls' bodies were found, right? Was it Brad Weber? And Brad Weber potentially drives a white van. So they talked to Brad Weber. Again, this interview's not recorded. I don't know why you don't record the fucking interviews. The interview is not recorded, and Brad Weber said that he left at 2:00. So again, Abby and Libby were dropped off at like 1:49. Brad left his work at 2:00. He was working at Subaru Indiana Automotive in Lafayette, and it takes about 20 to 25 minutes for him to drive home. So he would have been, I think the bridge guy video was taken like 2:17, 2:14. Bridge guy video. 2:13. 2:13. So with that, I mean, that timeline could fit. The timeline could fit perfectly with when Abby and Libby were at the bridge, when they would have encountered the bridge guy, when they would have got abducted, and when Brad Weber would have came home driving his van that Richard Allen said he saw. And that's what interrupted him from assaulting the girls instead. So there's issues with Brad Weber, though. Let me show you guys this diagram. So this is a diagram that I drew. Enjoy. This is the path that Brad Weber would have been driving. His home is, I think, right here. This is the path that he's driving, okay? This right here, again, this is the bridge. Can y'all see that? Can I zoom in more? This is the bridge right here. The bridge goes all the way down here, remember, into the woods. And so the bridge guy abduction would have happened right around here. So maybe Brad was driving down when that was happening. Maybe. Possibly. And so maybe, you know, Richard Allen was scared off and he ordered the girls, him included, to cross this bridge over here. Cross this bridge over here, and this is where the girls would have been murdered. So maybe the timeline does fit, right? Maybe it does fit. Wait until we get to the trial part, though. Next, let's go to a court order or a court's decision. So September 4, 2024. So again, like a month before the trial starts. This is what the court writes. The court, having had the state's motion in limine under advisement following the hearing conduct on August 1st, 2024, and having heard and considered the evidence, admitted exhibits, arguments of counsel. Defendant's supplemental submission regarding state's motion in limine filed on August 13, 2024. State's response to defendant's memorandum of law filed August 26, 2004. Grants paragraph 1 through 6, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is the important part. As it relates to paragraph 7, the burden is on the defendant to show a nexus between odinism, cult, or ritualistic killing. Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abraham, Keegan Klein, Jerry Klein, Ron Logan, and the murders of the 2 victims. Now, remember, Ron Logan's name was brought up during Richard Allen's interrogation. They're like, did you know Ron Logan? Did you lure the girls to meet some other guys? Did you introduce the girls to Ron Logan? Something like that. The case law is quite clear that the nexus must not be based on speculation, conjecture, rumor, or hearsay, but rather on admissible evidence. The court finds the defendant has failed to produce admissible evidence demonstrating a nexus between odinism, cult, or ritualistic killing, the names of all those people, and therefore the court grants paragraph 7 of the state's motion of limine over the defendant's objection. The court will not permit the evidence submitted by the defense in support of their arguments regarding third-party perpetrators in the trial of this cause as a probative value of such evidence is greatly outweighed by the confusion of the issues and its potential to mislead the jury. The court will allow that evidence to support an offer of proof at trial if one is made by counsel. So again, motion in limine. For this here, they made the decision to not allow the defense to introduce a third-party culprit, which is, maybe it's odinism, maybe this was a ritualistic killing. Here are these other people that were investigated, that were suspicious, that were, possible suspects. That's what I meant to say. However, with this, the court says that, okay, well, as the trial happens, if you guys end up providing evidence that supports this theory, then I'll let you bring it in. Okay? I'll let you bring it in. All right. So then I don't even know where to start with the trial stuff. Where do we start with the trial stuff? Okay, so a little bit of the logistics. Now, the judge, remember how she let the cameras in once? Apparently, she wrote a little thing saying that, like, she lost her trust and how the news coverage is going to cover this in the courtroom. And so because of that, she's never going to allow cameras in here ever again. She only allowed the cameras once. I don't know if something actually happened. She didn't list what the news reporters did to have not listened to her orders, but she was like, yeah, I don't have confidence in them, so I'm not going to let them cover the trial. So, of course, this trial, a lot of people have their eyes on it. A lot of people decided to line up to attend the trial. I think depending on which day you're going, you might have like 17 to like 20, maybe like 23, 24 seats available to the public. Everyone has to line up. Apparently people were lining up like the night before, and you're like lining up there, you're falling asleep on your chair, and things are really crazy. And just a huge shout out to like the people who went there and tried to attend the trials, and the ones that are trying to cover it and let the world and the public know. Like, huge shout out to them. Very tiresome. It's wild. Some of the people that I know that did that was Andrea Burkhart. There was Harvard lawyer Lee. There was Hidden True Crime. I don't remember her name. I think is it Laura or Lauren? And so those are the 3 that I know that are like the YouTubers. And there's other people that attended, journalists, people who are part of the media news crew who attended as well. But yeah, very wild. And as each day progressed, like things got busier, the lines got longer. It was really strict for people to, like, the rules were really strict from what I've heard. Like, initially, you couldn't bring food, water into the courtroom. So after, when they would recess for lunch, people wouldn't even have time to go eat because they would lose their place. They would have to get out of the courtroom and then get back into line. And so they weren't able to eat for like a couple of days, which I'm like, that would drive me crazy. That would drive me crazy. I don't know. It's wild to me. And then not only that, at some point, I think the judge did allow people to bring food and drinks, not into the courtroom, but into the courthouse. And so they can eat it while they're like in line. And at some point, I heard that there was like line sitters, which are really awesome. There are people that were willing to wait in line so other people can take their place and, go into the courthouse and report on this. So that was really awesome as well. It was really cool to hear about that. But yeah, very wild. This is a very, very expensive trial. Initially, it was supposed to be about like $2 million, this entire thing with the Richard Allen case or the Delphi case. $2.2 million, but then they decide to extend that out a little bit. And it's actually a $4.3 million trial. So the jury has to be sequestered from Allen County, which is about 90 miles away from Delphi. And, a lot of people, they're probably not happy to be there. They got things to do. Apparently there was one woman who's on the jury who did not want to be there. She tried to get out of it by saying she was like, had like financial hardships and stuff like that. Like, it'd be really hard for her to do it. And, I get it. Like, you're going to be sitting in trial Monday through Saturday, not Monday through Friday. It's Monday through Saturday. Monday through Saturday. And anything you do, it's going to be monitored by the bailiffs. Sunday is like your day off, but I'm sure that's monitored as well. And then your communication with family members, if you're seeing them, that's going to be probably monitored. So they really want to make sure that you don't have outside influence. The jury doesn't have outside influence, which is good, but like, oh God, to be sequestered like that, Jesus, crazy. Let's talk about the prosecution. We have Stacey Diener, Nick McLellan, and James Luttrell. Not for the trial stuff. I'm going to just pretty much just go over like the basics of it, pretty much a broad overview. It'll be really hard to do coverage like day by day. That'll be too much. So I'm going to do a broad overview. But at the end of this video, I have tons of people that I recommend you guys to check out, watch, read articles, and you guys definitely take a look at that. For the defense, we have Andrew Baldwin, Bradley Rosie, who were the two that were always on the Richard Allen case. They're, people, they have their own private practice, and they were court appointed to Richard Allen. And then we have a Jennifer Auger, I think that's her name. I felt like it was pronounced differently when other people said her name. I feel like they said Miss J or something, but I think it's Miss Auger. All right, so the jury, they are deliberating right now. They're deliberating for over 2 days. And you know what? People think it might be a hung jury. It could be a hung jury. And we'll discuss all the whys. Because at this point, how I'm telling you the story, you're probably like, yeah, Richard Allen did it. Like, the hell, he confessed so many times. You got the cartridge, you got the Google searches, maybe, depending on what you think about the Google searches. You got him saying that he was there, like, you got video, got the voice, everything. You got everything there. Now we're going to go to the trial and see what you guys think afterwards. So I don't think they're going to let the jury be a hung jury because $4.3 million, that's a lot. If Richard Allen has to be tried again, it's going to be so much more expensive. So I'm thinking if they are like, oh, we're coming back with a hung jury, I don't know, I think they're going to really try to push for them to make a decision. They really are. Before we get into the trial, I want to go back again to the alternative theories that the defense has. Spoiler alert. The defense has not been allowed to introduce any third-party theories during the trial. They kept trying to. The judge kept denying it. The judge was like, there's no nexus. There needs to be a nexus here. And so the attorneys were like, okay, well, this sucks. So again, the defense attorneys, they think that it was an involvement with odinism, Norse paganism, white supremacy, sacrificed girls to Odin. There were sticks on Abby and Libby, possibly resembling runes. There was like blood smears on a tree that could look like a rune. They think the girls were forced in a car. They were driven to another site where the murder happened, and then they returned the bodies and dumped the bodies at the creek. We'll talk about this. The judge denies introduction to alternative theories, says the burden is on the defense to show the nexus between odinism, cult, or ritualistic killing. However, the court can change their mind, if the evidence supports it, but she never did. They kept saying that like Richard Allen has the Sixth Amendment right to introduce an alternative theory to provide this to the jury. But I guess the nexus wasn't there. All right. Alternative theories that were investigated by law enforcement. Apparently, Abby did date someone and they investigated into him and his dad. I think online people think they're involved as well. Into like the Odin stuff and like some of the stuff that were posted on social media. We're not going to get into that. At least not in this video. I don't know if I'm going to get into that. Not in this video, but you guys are welcome to definitely like look it up, see what you guys think. Because people are like, oh, the positions of the bodies look like these tarot cards. And I was like, it kind of does, but I don't know. Kind of like, I don't know. Or like the bloody like F on the tree. Like, I kind of see it, but I kind of also don't, right? I don't know. But I get what they're saying. So apparently Abby's mom was on a podcast where she was like, no, I don't think they're involved. The police put them through the ringer. They questioned the shit out of them, but I don't think they're involved. I'll link the podcast down below if you guys want to watch that. Apparently, like I said, there's a picture that's posted on social media where the dad had posted a picture on social media of, we don't know what they are, girls, mannequin, women, dead bodies, I don't know what the heck it is, where it was like they're like in the forest, there's like branches on top of them, and yeah, it looks, could possibly look like similar to the crime scene. There was another person that lived near the trail that was also a suspect as well. That person has since been deceased since 2020, but his house is like right near where the trail is. There was someone named Keegan, who is actually incarcerated right now for CP related stuff. He said he didn't have anything to do with it, but apparently this Keegan person, had a profile picture of this good-looking young man, model. I forgot what the username was, but he was catfishing people, okay? Apparently he was catfishing Abby and Libby. They were messaging each other and stuff like that. But this Keegan guy said that he had nothing to do with it. All right, just wanted to address those. All right, so just a little bit of details. Richard Allen is 5'4", about maybe 145 pounds during the time or during the time of the arrests. Abby, I don't know what her height is. I don't know how much she weighs. I didn't have that information. Libby is 5'4", roughly around 200 pounds. So we're going to talk about potentially how the crime could have happened, the crime scene, and more details about what was unveiled during the trial. Now, before we get to that, let's talk about the witnesses. So remember I told you guys that there were witnesses that saw Richard Allen. They're like, oh, that's Bridge Guy right there. That's Bridge Guy. So let's talk about the witnesses. Let's talk about the timeline. I'm going to show you guys the timeline. It might be easier for you guys to follow it, or I don't know if it'll make it more confusing for you guys. Might make it more confusing because I have a bunch of like, the reason why like I don't show my notes all the time is because it's just a bunch of shit on here as well. I don't want it to be super confusing for you guys. But let's talk about the timeline. I think I'll just tell you guys the timeline. All right, so let's focus on group one. We have 4 teenagers. We have Rayleigh Voorhees, Isabel Voorhees, Brianne Wilbur, and Anna Spath. I believe only 2 of them testified during the trial. We have group 2, Sarah Carball. We have a group 3, Betsy Blair. And I have Sarah Carball on here twice. Whoopsies. All right, and then we have Abby and Libby. And then we have Richard Allen. So these are the main people that we're going to focus on for now during the trial on that day. All right, so what do we got here? So Betsy Blair, I think Betsy Blair was driving around on 300 North. Again, 300 North is, I think the best way to do this is to have this here. Yes, and then I'll have the map here and I'll try to describe it as we're going through this. Do my best. I will do my best. Or did I have a better map of this? Hold on, I think I drew my own map. I think I got my own map. Oh, no, that's zoomed out. Yeah, let's do this. And that. Okay, so what are you guys looking at? This is the map that I had earlier, right? This one, I don't know. I just put this picture here because I wanted you guys to see what Freedom Bridge looks like. Like, this is the parking spot. You walk across the Freedom Bridge, and then the trail is this way. This is basically a separate picture that I superimpose on top of the bigger picture. So I should have made a border outline to, yeah. Basically, this is just a blow up, and it's over here. All right, let's talk about timeline. So we have Betsy Blair. Betsy Blair is like driving back and forth on 300 North. Apparently, she like visits the trail twice. But she's driving back and forth. And you know what? We have a surveillance camera. Yes. Honestly, when I first listened to people covering this, I thought it was who's your harvest store? Like, who is your harvest store? But it's who's your harvest store? Who's your harvest store? Hard to pronounce for me. But who's your harvest store? They have surveillance cameras and they got footage of cars driving back and forth. So, you know, they look at the footage and they could see Betsy Blair driving back and forth on 300 North. Okay, she's driving back and forth. Brianne and the group of 4 girls. Can I just call them the group of 4 girls? Okay, I'm going to say the group of 4 girls. So the group of 4 girls, they arrive at the Freedom Bridge. Again, we're at the very beginning of... Can y'all see this? Yes, okay. I don't know if you can see my mouse earlier. They were at the very beginning of the trail, and they take a picture here. Again, this is a big blow up of it, of the Freedom Bridge. That is at 12:25 p.m. The group of girls, they arrive at the Freedom Bridge. They post a picture on Facebook. The group of girls, later on at 12:43, so they make their way walk around here, and they take a picture of the Monon High Bridge. At some unknown time, actually, one of the victims, Libby, saw that they posted something on their Snapchat and was like, oh, hey, you're at Monon High Bridge? Are you still there? And the girl was like, no, we've already left. So didn't get to meet up with Libby or Abby. Now, at this point, at 1:15, Betsy Blair is traveling west on 300 North. So again, she's like kind of driving like back and forth. Like she's going here and then she like gets off here. I don't know. She's just driving back and forth. The group of girls, they take a photo as they're leaving. This is at 1:26. So 1:26, they are leaving again. So they make their way back to where the Freedom Bridge is. They take a picture at 1:26. And at that point, they said that they saw a man sitting on the bench near the Freedom Bridge. Huh, okay. Sitting near the bench on the Freedom Bridge. And this time would align with when Richard Allen said he arrived and how long he was there for, from 1:30 to 3:30, right? So if Richard Allen was there, it would show that he arrived there. So, fuck. Let me dial it back a little bit. Let me dial it back because the timelines are really hard to do. Okay, so at 1:26, the girls, they come back, making their way back to Freedom Bridge. And shortly afterwards, they saw a man sitting there. However, about a minute after 1:26, so again, I think the timelines are a little bit like sandwich here, Mr. Allen, law enforcement think that they saw his car, his black Ford Focus, passing this way to the Hoosier Harvest Store. So driving up this way at 1:27. And again, it could be shortly after that he saw the girls there, that he was like sitting near the Freedom Bridge. And so they're like, yeah, we know that's his car because it looks like a black Ford Focus 2016. And you know what? His rims were sporty. You can kind of see the lights shining through them. It's like, okay. So maybe the group of girls did see Richard Allen at the Freedom Bridge area. At this point, Abby and Libby, they have not made it to the trail yet. They're on their way over. They're posting things on Snapchat, taking pictures. At this point, Betsy Blair is now driving east onto 300 North again. So she's going east this way. Betsy Blair is driving east. And she arrives per her Fitbit information. I don't remember where Betsy Blair said that she parked. But Betsy Blair said that, she was, she got her Fitbit on and she actually got to the Monon High Bridge. So right over here. Hope y'all can see that. Yep. She got to the bridge and she was like, she saw the first platform, was like, I'm not walking down that bridge. It's too scary. But she did say that she saw a man there. This was around 1:46, maybe a little bit after 1:46. I'm sorry. Where she walked to the platform, she saw a man standing on the first platform, and she thinks he was about 50 feet away. She believed that man was waiting for someone. So the state's theory is that, that man must be Richard Allen. Okay. At this point, at 1:49, both Libby and Abby are dropped off at the Mears Farm entrance. So this is the Mears Farm right here. And like I said, you can enter the trail from this way, or the common area is to park here and enter this way. But the girls are being dropped off, so you don't need to walk this long way. You can just be dropped off right here. So the girls are dropped off at 1:49. So at this point, Betsy Blair, she's like, she's not going to go across that, because I told you guys how scary that bridge looked. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to cross that bridge. So she continued to walk, and she said that halfway between, so she's walking back, halfway between the bridge and the Mears Farm entrance, she sees Abby and Libby. So she sees two girls walking past by her, and the girls are walking towards where that man was, presumably Richard Allen. At this point, it's 2:00. The state says that Brad Weber was clocking out of his work at Subaru. Okay. Subaru. Oh, sorry. I didn't mention. Yeah, we're doing Brad Weber in here. We're throwing him in here. Mr. Brad Weber is the one that drives the van. So it's clocking out of work from Subaru. Okay. At this point, 2:05. Libby posts a picture of Monon High Bridge. I think I have a picture of that. She posts a picture of Monon High Bridge, and shortly afterwards, we have a picture of her taking a picture of Abby. So she takes a picture of the bridge, and then she takes a picture of Abby. And this is the one where I'm like, yo, does it look like there's someone back there? Kind of does. Looks kind of creepy. At 2:07, I think it's the picture. Actually, you know what? What's interesting? That picture that was taken of Abby, they were actually not able to recover that on the phone. Mr. Cecil said that he actually found that on the internet. So someone must have taken a screenshot of it and was like, oh, hey, these girls are missing. I'm friends with them on Snapchat. They're on this bridge. So apparently the investigator found this picture, the picture of Abby on the bridge on the internet. They were not able to recover that on the phone. At this point, from 2:08 to 2:25, Libby's phone moves about 414 and 38.38 meters. This is a note that I got from lawyer Lee. There's a 2:13 video of Abby walking across the bridge. There's a man behind her, and maybe take this transcription with a grain of salt, but this is what law enforcement said that they heard from listening to it over and over again. I think people in the courtroom weren't really sure. They weren't really sure if they heard this. But apparently, law enforcement says that Abby's walking across a bridge. There's a man behind her. And Abby's saying, "Is he right here? Don't leave me up here." Libby says, "This is the path. That be a gun. There's no path here. We have to go down here." The man says, "Guys." The girl says, "Hi." Man says, "Down the hill." I think the only part that we heard that might have been sort of clear is "down the hill." That famous video where it's like the bridge man, it's like "down the hill, down the hill." Actually, let me just play it for you guys because you guys probably have already seen it. But if you guys haven't already, I forgot to show you guys in the other video. That's all that we've got. We don't have the rest of the video. Don't have the rest of the audio. That's all that we've got. About a minute later, 2:14, someone tries to biometrically unlock the phone. Now, at this point, at 2:14, Betsy Blair, she probably reaches where she parked the car and wherever it is, she leaves. Oh, you know what? Betsy Blair, I think she parks over here. Okay. So Betsy Blair parked at Hoosier Harvest Store. So she probably walked over here and counted the girls halfway, left, and got back in her car over here. The group of 4 girls, they're the ones that parked over here. Now, Richard Allen, presumably, parked over here at the old CPS building. That's what the state thinks. And that's how he walked over here, and he ran to the 4 group of girls at the Freedom Bridge, walked over here, was at the first platform, looking at fish, he said. And that's when Betsy Blair came and saw the man was standing by the first platform. So the story is aligning. Story is aligning. At this point, Betsy Blair says that when she was leaving, she saw a old blue car. Now, this old blue car, apparently, she said it reminded her of her father's 1965 Mercury Comet vehicle. And so law enforcement was trying to say, like, "Oh, you probably saw Richard Allen's car." But she was like, "It looked like a 1965 Mercury Comet vehicle." Apparently, that car looks very different than what Richard Allen's car would look like. Now, at this point, the group of girls, they, the group of girls, they said they reached the mouth of the trail and they head home. So I don't know if the group of girls walked all the way down and then they head home. Not really quite sure. All right, Libby's phone. So from 2:25 to 2:31, Libby's phone moves 68 steps. So that's about 50.54 meters. At this point, the girls would have been encountering the bridge guy. Where is it? Oh, over here. I don't know if this is 50.4 meters, but they would have been on this side, maybe with Richard Allen. And then Brad Weber would have been driving down, possibly around that time frame, and spooked off Richard Allen. So he forces the girls to cross the creek and decides to abandon his plan and decides to murder them instead. So having that, it's like, oh, okay, wow, the timeline fits. Oh, maybe the timeline does fit. Now, the issue with the eyewitnesses, let me read to you what they reported they saw. So Betsy Blair parked at Hoosier Harvest Store. She said she saw Richard Allen she said she saw a man, not Richard Allen. She said she saw a man at the first plank of the bridge, and she's like, "I'm not crossing that. It looks scary. No way." She describes the man as boyish man, in his 40s, brown, poofy hair, average height. Richard Allen I mean, looks like this. I don't know if that's boyish, maybe 40s. Brown poofy hair, average height. Rich Allen's like 5'4", 5'5". I would say that's a short, pretty short. Really? Really, who was part of the group of the 4 girls, so Rayleigh and Brienne, really said she saw someone in their early 20s and 30s. Not him. Bigger build. He's 5'4", dirty blonde hair, can't really tell. Brown eyes, wrinkly kind of face, was wearing maybe all black. Brienne said that she saw a white man, blue or black windbreaker with a collar, a hood under, baggy jeans, taller. She said that she came probably about the height of his shoulder. And Brienne remembered this guy because, you know, they're in a very lovely community. They are very friendly with each other. And Brienne said she said hi to this man, and the man ignored her, just had his hand in his pockets, had his head down. And so she just thought it was really weird. So we're getting descriptions that are kind of like all over the place. And these descriptions also don't seem to match Richard Allen. Like I said, he's short. He seems kind of like a stout guy. Not, I wouldn't say young. I wouldn't say poofy hair. The descriptions are all over the place. You know, and we know about this. We know about eyewitness testimony. Usually it's not the most reliable. It's possible it's like they, you know, maybe saw someone, maybe saw Richard Allen, and just completely got the descriptions completely wrong, maybe. All right, so our other witness, we have Sarah Carball. So at this point, the girls would have already been murdered. And at this point, Sarah Carball said that she was driving down. Sarah Carball, where is her information at? Sarah Carball. What? Do I not have it? I don't have the time for her. Okay, but all I know is Sarah Carball apparently was like driving down 300. And she said that she drove like 35 miles an hour or something like that. And she saw a man muddy and bloody. That's what she testified to. Muddy and bloody. However, when she was being cross-examined, they were like, did you see someone that was muddy and bloody? Are you sure about that? And so they pulled up her transcript for the first 2 interviews. And they said that in the first interview, you said muddy 11 times. In the second interview, you said muddy again 13 times. You never said bloody. She was like, well, and you guys remember how they lost footage of the interviews? She was just like, well, when I met with them, I did say bloody. And he was like, no, you didn't. Where did you say bloody? And she's like, well, it's not my fault if the interview footage got lost. Now, I don't know if the interview footage got lost maybe like the 3rd time. I think the 3rd time was like when she said, yeah, I think maybe it was the 3rd interview that got lost. I'm not really quite sure. But the defense was trying to say that, like, you never said bloody. You only said muddy, 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 muddy. And apparently it was really combative. They were combating each other while she was testifying. So I don't know if it was a good look or not to the jury, but that happened. It also seems like not only was eyewitness testimony like all over the place, you know, people had the clothes description wrong. They thought that one of them thought that Rich Allen was wearing like a tan jacket, for example. And then they saw the bridge guy video and they're like, oh yeah, I saw the bridge guy video. Okay, you're right. Maybe he was wearing, you know, darker colors, you know? So the descriptions were like all over the place, you know? So, do with it what you will. What else do we got here? Let's talk about the cell phone. Actually, no, we're not going to go to the cell phone yet. So we already know that they have the video footage. As far as in opening statements, it was finally revealed how these girls, how Abby and Libby both died. The prosecutor revealed that there was an injury to Abby's neck. Libby, however, had multiple injuries. And when they had the person who did the autopsy, they talked about that. And we're going to go over pretty quickly and talk about how odd the crime scene was. So I already talked about like kind of like the general overview of it, but just a little bit more details about that. So starting with Abby, again, Abby, the 13-year-old, was a little smaller than Libby. She was found wearing Libby's clothes. Okay, found wearing Libby's hoodie, found wearing Libby's jeans, and I think she had her own like undergarments, maybe. Not too sure if I think she had like maybe like a sports bra, a pink t-shirt underneath. She had her black Converse shoes. I don't know if they found her No, I don't think so. Because her clothes were the ones that were found the rest of her clothes was found in the creek. So, like I said, she was wearing Libby's like clothes, and then she had some of her clothes on as well. Now, with her, we had a picture that I posted the picture that I showed from Court TV about the positions that she was in. Now, apparently, the weird thing about Abby was that so again, she was kind of found like this, right? Like this. One leg was like maybe like crossed over the other leg. And so the weird thing about her is that, yes, she had blood where her injury was. She didn't have blood anywhere else. So there was blood where her injury was. There's a lot of bloods in the scene, but not on her. Apparently, she was completely pristine. Like her torso area was pristine. I think like her arms were pristine. There was no blood on her whatsoever. People thought that was really, really, really weird. I think her hand too was pristine. Libby, on the other hand, Libby had multiple lacerations, multiple to her throat. They think that maybe there was like 3, I think, but it's possible that some of them could have been like duplicate swipes. Like it could have been like a go over. I don't know what's called. Like they would like basically swipe the area again. And Libby had, she had blood all over. It seems like at some point she tried to stop the blood from coming out. She had blood all over her hands. There's just blood everywhere. And it would make sense. But however, it's weird is that how come Abby didn't have blood everywhere? Was she being held down? Or was she cut after she was unconscious? We don't know. We don't know. It seems like Abby, because her cut wasn't as deep as Libby's, it took her, she didn't die right away. Might have been like 5 to 10 minutes that he estimated these girls were, basically slowly dying. But it's weird if you're slowly dying, wouldn't you try to like cover the wound up? Wouldn't you touch it? Yeah, really weird. Or was she being held? Was she being maybe bound by something? With Libby, Libby would have died sooner because, again, she had the deeper cuts to her. And yeah, people said it was really weird because there's some parts where it looked like the blood was kind of like trailing off. There was like droplets as if they're being carried. But I think that's why a lot of people think that it could have been multiple people who did this, or they were possibly murdered at a different scene. But I mean, there was a lot of blood at the scene. There was a lot of blood there. All right. There was a little bit of Libby's blood on a tree as well. They did the DNA tests for that. At some point, they were brought over to do the autopsy, and the person said that there was no signs of SA. However, just because there's no signs of SA trauma, doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? I mean, the girls were, at some point, both of them unclothed. And so he also said that there's no defensive wounds. However, the weird thing was Abby did have like a faint line under her nose, but he thought maybe it was like covered by cloth or by tape. So maybe like she was bound. However, there was no residue from the adhesion whatsoever. There was just like a reddish mark near her bottom lip area. Libby had cerebral edema, so her brain was swelling, again, likely more to die quickly than Abby. They were unable to tell if the killer was left-handed or right-handed. And initially, the coroner thought that the wounds were from different types of blades, like maybe serrated and non-serrated. They weren't sure, though. The only reason why they thought it was serrated was maybe because, maybe they were thinking it was like the hilt of the knife or something like that it could have caused it. It wasn't until, I think like before the trial happened, like very recently, that the coroner was just like, yeah, it was just like one day in my garage. And, I thought maybe it might be a box cutter. Maybe it was a box cutter because there was like parallel lines to make the gripping surface for the thumb. And so that's why he thought maybe it was a box cutter, and maybe it was like, that's where the possible serrated looking knives could have came from. Yeah. But again, remember how they said Richard Allen's, his confession. Okay, well, one thing would have been the box cutter detail. Well, the box cutter detail didn't come out until recently. People can say that maybe you're just trying to retrofit the story to what has already been out, or, maybe genuinely he was just in the garage one day. He's like, it could be a box cutter. But again, is that really a detail that only the killer would know? Next, we had let's talk about the gun stuff. Okay, Melissa Oberg. Melissa Oberg testified, and she was the one who said that the cartridge. So I was reading this article, and I really appreciate that they broke it down for this. They said cartridge is a single round ammunition. A cartridge is made of a bullet and a casing. The bullet is a projectile that comes out. The casing is what is left behind. Because this was an unspent cartridge, it's an unspent cartridge because it was not fired. It was actually cycled out of the gun. So that's what I'm going to refer to cartridge. I thought cartridge was a bunch of ammos in a cartridge. I don't know. I don't fucking know. Okay, so it was a cartridge. Now, what happened was at the crime scene, they found an unspent cartridge. Okay, I mean, it wasn't fired. It wasn't pew 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 fired. The casing was just cycled out, so you could probably just eject it and it just comes out. And so they took, handguns, they took firearms, they took cartridge from Richard Allen. And I remember they were like, there's that one, it was that one 40 caliber WNS. It was like West Smith and Winchester, I think. And it was weird because that was the only one that he had in this keepsake box. Like, oh, is this important to you? And so apparently this expert said that she was able to find that there were 3 marks on the cartridge, and it was from the ejector. Okay. There was like 3 marks from the ejector, 3 other tool marks from the extractor. So the thing is that she tried to replicate this. So she tried to replicate getting the same marks by essentially ejecting the cartridge out. And she was like, I kept doing it, just didn't match. Like, okay. However, when she fired the gun, she was like, oh, when I fired the gun, the lines match up. However, there is issues with this because a lot of people that opined about this, including the defense's rebuttal expert, was like, you're comparing apples to oranges. You have to make sure what you're doing is replicable. If it's not replicable, then it's not the same thing. So with Richard Allen, the reason why they were able to get the lines to match up is because they fired it. But she's matching she's matching a cycle cartridge to a fired cartridge. They said it's apples to orange. I'm not supposed to be doing that. But she's like, it's like the same thing, It's like the same thing because you're still getting the markings from I think she's at the ejector or something. But they're like, no, you have to compare apples to oranges. That's what the defense expert said. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, if you can't replicate it, then that's to me just doesn't sound reliable. But I don't know. I don't know how the jury, maybe it's the jury, maybe when they hear an expert say that, like, oh, it matches. They're like, oh, okay, I agree with you. But to me, I thought that was really weird. So we're going to go through the whole list of all the stuff they had against Richard Allen and whether or not, if I think it's really strong or not. All right. Now, let's talk about we're going to be like kind of all over the place, but Mr. Brad Weber. Mr. Brad Weber, the one who says that he clocked out of Subaru that day, drove his van, and possibly interrupted Richard Allen from what he was going to do, because that's what Richard Allen said during the confession, right? Well, apparently he told conflicting stories. So he did say that he, went home after work. That's what he did. When he was interviewed again later by FBI, he said that like, oh no, I was servicing my ATMs. Apparently he's got about like 30 to 35 ATM machines that he works with. He works on the machines when they run out of money. He goes to gas stations, restaurants, taverns, things like that. And he didn't go home that day. So we have conflicting stories. Now, when he testified in the stand, he maintains that, no, I went home that day. I didn't service my ATMs. And I just don't know how this slipped through law enforcement's fingers, because they were already investigating Brad Weber, right? They were investigating him. They actually searched his house. They found firearms. They found, ammunition there, and they tried to match it. And weren't they able to confirm whether or not that he serviced the ATMs machines that day? If he's going to gas stations, restaurants, don't they have surveillance footage? I don't understand how we don't know the answer to this. Or maybe the state does know and they don't want to share with the defense, but I feel like you would have to share for the defense, no? Anyways, so that's another story that might be a little bit weird. Also, the van detail that was confessed to Dr. Monica Walla. Let's talk about Dr. Monica Walla. Reminder, Dr. Monica Walla is the one where she was seeing Richard Allen as, like a therapist while he was at Westville Correctional Facility, where he's under, solitary confinement for like a total of like 13 months. But about 5 to 6 months in, he was confessing, and, he gave the detailed confessions to Dr. Monica Walla. There's a lot of issues with Dr. Monica Walla. It's crazy. The issue with Dr. Monica Walla, okay, so, when she did her direct examination, it was like, wow, this is good. We're getting lots of confessions, seems detailed, and we could see how this is happening. Like Richard Allen, he was waiting for the girls. He was going to, sexual nature, and he was scared off, and he decided to kill him instead. Okay, like the story's starting to make sense. We find out that Dr. Monica Walla had a special interest in this case. Before she was assigned to Richard Allen, she's a true crime enthusiast. She was on these forums, these Facebook pages. She was contributing, trying to figure out who the killer was. She was like, she was pretty deep into this. She was listening to podcasts. And so on her like an hour and a half drive to work, she would listen to like the Delphi murders podcast, like a bunch of different podcasters talking about the Delphi murder stuff. And she was even curious to drive to Monon High Bridge to go check it out. So we have lots of issues here. And it was like, well, did you let your supervisors know that you had an interest in this case, a special interest? And apparently when they did a pretrial hearing for this, she was like, no, she didn't. And then when she was testifying the stand, she's like, oh, what I meant by that was I forgot that I actually did tell them, but not officially. Like I didn't put it on the record or anything. I just like, told them. I forgot about that. So I did tell them. Here's what happened. They've discovered that Dr. Monica Walla was, contributing to the Facebook groups, the forums. She was following the Delphi case. She was very interested in it. And when they did the pretrial hearing, this was like back in June. I don't know if it was like June of this year or June of like 2020. No, June. I think June of this year. She, they told her that she can't come back to Westville, to the prison anymore. She still works because like basically these prisons, they have like these contract employees work with them, these companies they contract out, and she comes in and works with them. And so they said that, yeah, she basically got fired from that. She's still working with the contracting company, but she's not at Westville anymore because they found out what happened, and they probably found out that it was unethical, that she was this involved in the case, and she was treating Richard Allen. Crazy ass shit. This is just so dumb. I just don't understand. Because this also happened in the Karen Reed stuff as well, where there's like, oh, if there's conflict of interest, fucking disclose it. Withdraw from the case. Don't be a part of it. Because you know what happens when you go to trial? These are the doubts that come up in the jury's mind. All these doubts here. And I have doubts. Because now when I heard the confession, I was like, oh, yeah, that's like really rock solid. And then I hear that like, she like she has a special interest in this case. And, you have to trust that, she would not be biased and not let that seep into her treatment of Richard Allen. But she would tell Richard Allen what she would hear about this case. She would give him like updates about it. She told him that he had supporters and not to lose hope. But what if, because here's the thing, when girls are abducted, right? What do we hear a lot? White vans, danger, 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 like free candy or something. And so maybe this white van theory was floating online. Maybe she introduced it to Richard Allen, right? Maybe, possibly, maybe not. But the issue that I'm having is that this is a woman who had an interest in this, and she didn't withdraw herself. She didn't let someone else take over. She continued to be his therapist, probably because she wanted information. And not only that, like I'm actually really glad that she admitted to a lot though, and just not lied on the stand, because she seemed like she was like very, very truthful when she was testifying, I guess, at that point. But she said that she would even look up the case files of other inmates that were potential suspects of the Delphi case. And you're not supposed to be doing that. You're not supposed to be using, the power that you have to have access to the system to be looking up things for your own personal interest. But she was looking up the Keegan Klein person that I mentioned, the guy that is currently being incarcerated right now for CP stuff. But they thought he was involved because he was like catfishing Libby and Abby and a bunch of other girls. Yeah, she would look up people in the system with the credentials that she had. And you're not supposed to be doing that, you know? Not supposed to be doing that. So there's a lot of issues with Dr. Monica Walla. They did ask her again, like, oh, hey, like, you know, looking at Richard Allen now, do you change your mind? Do you actually think that he was actually in psychosis? Do you change your mind? Because before she thought he was faking it. She's like, yeah, maybe I would reevaluate. That's what I remember someone saying. So lots of issues with Dr. Monica Walla, possible issues with Brad Weber. I mean, usually, you know, when you have like a trial, there's going to be like some holes here and there, or some inconsistencies, and sometimes you just like let it fly. But when there's like so many major ones, one after another, it's just like, oh God, it becomes really tough. I will say though that there were people that attended the trial that said that like, oh, the confession, you know, when, like I mentioned earlier, the confession that he had with his mom, that sounds like it could possibly be truthful. But there are some people who are like, no, I listened to the confession and it seems like he was just gone by then. Completely gone. Let's see. Where else? Who else are we going to talk about? Oh, let's talk about the fishing license. So, remember Captain Dan Doolin? So he was the one that was the very, very first to interview Richard Allen. This was back in 2017. So Richard Allen, again, self-reports and says like, hey, I was there at the Monon High Trail Bridge. My wife told me to come in, you know, and I'm here to talk to you guys. And so he was interviewed by Captain Dan Doolin. And Dan Doolin did mention that like, oh, you know, there is something weird because I noticed that him and his wife, they got new fishing licenses issued. And I noticed that, you know, it was around maybe like 2 months after the murders that Richard Allen changed his height from 5'4" to 5'6". That's really weird. Why would you be changing your height? Not only that, but you also changed your weight. This is because he didn't want to be picked up in the system as like, oh, the short guy that was near the bridge that could have potentially murdered 2 girls. But there was some back and forth with this when he was on the stand. Apparently the defense team was like, well, actually, Richard Allen, it was 5'6" back in way before. It was 5'6" before. In 2016, it was changed to 5'4", and then in 2017, it was changed back to 5'6" again. So it's possible that maybe his wife was just ordering these fishing licenses, or maybe, you know, maybe he wanted to like make it seem like he was taller. But they don't know who got these fishing licenses. The IP address was done by Richard Allen, his credit card, his login, but you know, maybe it could have been Kathy. Maybe Kathy could have ordered it. It was also mentioned that when the defense attorney was trying to say like, oh, it was 5'6" before, you know, and then it was 5'4" and then back to 5'6". Like, this is nothing out of the ordinary. The captain did say that, well, actually, there's a weird glitch in the system. So previously, if it was 5'6" in the history, maybe it was a possible system error. Because if you print the old license, let's say if the defense attorney went to, you know, 2011 and print the old license, no matter what, it will always say the most recent height and weight. So if I was a jury, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a wash for me. I don't fucking know. I'm not sure. It was also mentioned again, this was the same guy who was able to get the MEID on Richard Allen's 2017 phone, and they never recovered that phone. So to me, that's still kind of like, ooh, that's a weird one. That's a major yikes for me. All right, what else do we got here? Oh, in regards to the car. All right, let's talk about the car. Now, I don't know what the hell they're doing with the investigation. With the car, they didn't check to see how many 2016 black Ford Focuses were registered in Carroll County, where, you know, Delphi is at. They didn't check. They never checked. The jury asked about it. And because the cool thing is the jury can ask questions as the trial is happening, right? It's really cool. So the jury asked a question and the officer said he didn't know, but then he came back later on. He's like, okay, I checked. You know, there's only one registered, and that's to a Richard Allen. But then the follow-up question was like, okay, well, now you're thinking, well, did you check to see other neighboring counties? Because, you know, there's other people visiting from other counties. They come and visit this trail. And also, did you check other similar years of the vehicle or vehicles that are similar to a black Ford Focus? Like, no, didn't do any of that. So that would have been nice to know. That would have been good to know. Another weird one. Apparently, there was a hair intertwined in, was it Abby's fingers? I think it was Abby's fingers. There was hair intertwined in Abby's fingers. And everyone's like, oh, there's a hair. This is like when the trial's like starting. There's a hair, like, you know, whose hair is it? They never tested the hair. Really weird. The trial starts, they never tested the hair. They were like, oh, we didn't test it because, you know, I don't know how they would have known if they didn't test it, but they said like the hair was female, it was a possible relative. They're so busy, and they just didn't have time. It was not a suspect. So they finally test the hair that was found in, was it Libby's fingers? Oh, maybe it was Libby's fingers then, not Abby's. There's a hair found in Libby's fingers, and they found it to be Libby's sister. And then people online were like, oh my God, Libby's sister murdered them. But it's like, you live in the same household, you share the same laundry load, same like washer, dryer. I mean, I could have hair that's like, in here. I don't know. I mean, it's possible that there's just sister's hair on her because, they live together. So I don't know if that was like a huge, like major, like, for me, it's just like, okay, that's interesting. But we do know is that there is no Richard Allen DNA anywhere in that crime scene. Apparently they do have hair fibers, but the state didn't want to further test them because they didn't want to risk destroying them. They wanted to wait for future technology to possibly test the DNA of that hair. Just like, well, you have Richard Allen here now. This is a trial. Like, shouldn't you test it? But apparently they don't have any of Richard Allen's DNA at the crime scene whatsoever, which is like, okay, that's a pretty big deal. But not only that, it's also like, oh, well, we don't have anyone's DNA on that crime scene. Really weird. This, extremely violent crime that happened. No DNA. Very, very odd. In terms of, let's talk about the sticks. So law enforcement, they were questioned about like, okay, well, what do you think about the sticks? Do you think it's laid out in a weird way? And law enforcement was like, no, it could, the sticks could just be used to try to, cover the girls' bodies. And I was thinking, yeah, maybe like, maybe the killer started covering the bodies. I was like, never mind. This is like stupid. This is pointless. This is too tiring. I'm not going to do this. I mean, I think there's also like leaves out there as well. I don't know why he didn't try to use leaves to cover them. Maybe he tried to, and then he just like gave up and was like, fuck it. Like there's no point anyways. Someone's going to definitely find these girls. But the officer did mention that it could be something called the undoing by the killer. I feel like that sounds like a horror movie. What the undoing is that when there's an offender, they try to symbolically reverse the crime by tending to the victim to compensate for the feelings of remorse or guilt. So I think what I've heard examples were like, you would try to close like the victim's eyes, maybe. Maybe you would try to dress them again. So maybe that's why Abby was wearing Libby's clothes, possibly. Maybe they thought that like, oh, let me put the sticks on there to cover the girls up, especially because Libby was undressed. Maybe that's why he put the bigger branch on her to cover her up. Possibly. I don't know. It's just still very, very weird because we're trying to figure out what is the order that everything happened. Like, were the girls undressed by the bridge and almost, like Richard Allen was going to go after them, but then the van came and then they crossed the water, and then like, how did the clothes end up in the creek? Was one of the girls trying to carry her own clothes and then she drops it? Why was Abby dressed? Because I don't know if Abby dressed herself or if the killer dressed her after the fact. But it seems like since there was like no blood on her, I mean, I don't know. They're just like, okay, sorry. We're just like, these are all the thoughts that I've been having the past week. And it's also like, how would Richard Allen be able to corral the two girls without having one yell or scream? I mean, honestly, I think if someone was pointing a gun at me, I don't think my first reaction would be to scream. It would just be like, what the fuck? Kind of attitude. So I could see why the girls wouldn't scream at that point. It's possible that Richard Allen, the suspect, could have just like been like, hey, if you guys scream, I'm going to shoot you. Or maybe held one girl, was like, hey, if you run, I'm going to kill your friend. So it's possible that's why the two girls were there. I think it's also possible, because here's what I'm thinking. I was thinking, okay, well, what if it was one murderer and one murderer was bound one of the girls, like say maybe like put like a mouth thing on her, maybe put like, maybe like tied her up, right? I know that the autopsy report did mention that they didn't see any signs of like restraints, but what if it's possible to tie it in a way where it wouldn't leave marks behind, right? If you weren't like squirming around, if you weren't running and stuff like that. What if you were tied up, but in a way that, wasn't super tight or anything like that? And then it was also mentioned that Richard Allen is a fisherman. Maybe he knows how to do the special, fisherman's loop or ties or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they're called, right? So what if that's possible? What if one girl was bound? And it's possible, like, let's say if Abby was bound, right? And that's why she wasn't able to tend to her, like, her injury. And she just kind of like laid there for 5 to 10 minutes while she was bleeding out. Maybe she was bound and maybe her arms were held down. Not quite sure. Lots of questions here. All right, so here's a court thing. Party opponent hearsay rules are the exceptions to the hearsay rules. So, for example, the state, because the party opponent is Richard Allen, if he's making these confessions like, oh, I did this, I killed Abby and Libby, they're able to provide that to the trial, to the jury, right? However, the defense team, they are unable to present what Richard Allen said. So Richard Allen can't be like, oh no, but I said this, I said I was innocent, I said this. He's unable to provide that statement because it's hearsay. So the crazy thing is, or, you know, what's interesting to me is that, like, you know, the state can play all these audio tapes of Richard Allen confessing to the crimes. And of course, they're going to cherry pick, right, the parts where they want to show to the jury. They're going to cherry pick that. I mean, that's normal. It's common. And, you know, Richard Allen can't be like, oh, but I also said that was innocent all these other times, because, you know, that would be hearsay. And so the reason why I want to bring this up, what were we talking about? The phone calls. Yeah, so that's why we heard a lot of phone calls with Richard Allen, you know, confessing the crimes. And then, you know, they were unable to show the calls where it's like, well, here are the calls where Richard Allen said that he was innocent, that he's like losing his mind, and that he doesn't know if he's going to be crazy or not, that like the prison conditions are like Guantanamo Bay. So they're unable to show that to the jury. Let's talk about, so I was listening to other people who covered this crime as well. And, you know, there are people who kept saying like, oh, you know, Richard Allen confessed to the crime. Details, like I said, we already mentioned the details with the white van, the box cutter, and the one with Dr. Monica Walla with the white van as well. Like, oh, he mentioned details about the crime that only the killers would know, like, you know, putting the branches on the girls. Well, here's the thing. It seems like if we accept that it's possible that if we, you know, listen to the prison guard that testified, and he said that the envelope that Richard Allen gave was like, oh, here, this is my confession. If that was actually on April 5th, not March 3rd, not March 5th, that was actually on April 5th, that would make sense how the timeline. Richard Allen got the discovery, sees how atrocious the crime scene was, how horrible it was, either a reminder of what he did, or maybe he didn't do it. And he's like, oh shit, like this is how, like, this is what happened. Like, this is crazy. Like, anyone seeing those like gruesome photos, I feel like anyone could react like crazily, right? Like, it could really affect you. But again, that time frame of when Richard Allen submitted the confession to the warden, right? That's like seems to be debated. But to me, I'm thinking it's probably maybe April 5th. I'm going to maybe believe the guard who said that that's when he received the envelope, and instead of it was like a letter. And then also it just seems to match the time frame of what everyone said, the contacts. Because if he had confessed way before, why would he be normal and then not say anything to Dr. Monica Walla? It seems like everything just happened like so quickly. Like, once he got the discovery, then he confessed to his wife, and then he confessed to his mom and dad, stepfather, and then he confessed to Dr. Monica Walla, and then he was acting crazy and all that stuff. That to me seems okay. It seems to make more sense. So if he received the discovery, then he would know the details of the crime. He would see that there was injuries to the girl's neck. He would see that one of the girls was nude. So obviously sexually motivated crime. But I can also see why people are like, no, but he confessed though. He confessed. Like, there's so many confessions. How can the jury overlook that? And addressing Richard Allen pretending to act crazy for secondary gain, to me, just doesn't make sense. Because let's say that he was acting crazy, eating his feces, hurting himself, not eating, saying crazy things. Let's say he did that because maybe he wanted to, I don't know, maybe get the insanity thing in. That way they wouldn't be able to try him. But it just doesn't make sense, because if you're trying to do something to mitigate your circumstances, why confess, right? I feel like it should be one or the other. So let's say it just doesn't make sense. Why would you confess? If you want to pretend and act like you're insane, act like you're crazy, maybe he wanted to, like I mentioned, get out of solitary, right? That's possible. Maybe he wanted to be transferred elsewhere. Maybe he wanted to go to the medical unit. Maybe he wanted to, see his wife. That's possible. But why confess? Why confess to the crimes? That to me just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense why he would be confessing to crimes. So here's what I wrote. If Richard Allen was faking psychosis I'll share this with you guys. This is just like some thoughts that I had. If Richard Allen was faking psychosis, eating feces, lying naked, why would he confess to the murders? Was he faking psychosis for attention? Did he want better treatment? Did he want an upgraded facility? Okay, well, sure. But why confess though? Because if he confessed, then maybe he won't get better treatment. Maybe he will be looked at as a criminal, right? Maybe he wanted to confess to get the weight lifted off his chest. Well, why not just confess then? Why eat shit, right? If you wanted to feel better, if you wanted to just like, feel like you accepted your situation, why not just confess? Why start acting crazy? Did he want attention and have the weight lifted off his shoulders? Well, he could have just confessed to get attention. He didn't need to pretend to have psychosis. And then also, this is what I mentioned earlier. Why, was he faking psychosis for a sanity plea? Well, why confess? Why confess to the crimes? All right. Why did Richard Allen report to police that he was on the trails? Well, maybe he was innocent and he just wanted to be helpful. Maybe, he's like, I got nothing to hide. Or maybe he's guilty. Maybe he did commit the crimes, but he, was accidentally honest with his wife. And he didn't expect the wife to be like, oh, yeah, you should hit up law enforcement. He's like, oh, shit, well, I already told my wife. She said to hit up law enforcement. It'd be really weird if I didn't hit up law enforcement at this point. So maybe he hit up law enforcement because his wife told him to. But then when interviewing with law enforcement, why give law enforcement the correct time frame, the 1:30 to 3:30, right, that he was on the trail? Why not say they're like, oh, I was there in the morning? Maybe he didn't want to lie because maybe there's already eyewitnesses there. Why give law enforcement the clothes that he was wearing? Why not say he was wearing something completely different? But, maybe the witnesses that saw him there, maybe he was afraid that they would, contradict what he said. And it would make it seem like he was lying. Well, what's something he could have lied about? When they asked him what car he drove, he could have been like, oh, yeah, I drove my old gray car. Not my Ford Focus, not the black one. Because did anyone see him driving that car? I don't think so. Doesn't seem like it. Seems like no one saw him. They only saw him possibly at the trail. So why give the car that he drove that day instead of just being like, no, I was driving a different old car? I don't know. I guess maybe if his wife was driving that car to work, maybe that's why he didn't want to lie about that. But I just felt like he was a little too honest with a lot of his answers when, talking to the law enforcement in the interviews. I don't know. Really weird stuff. All right. How did Richard Allen confess the details of the crime? Was it after receiving discovery in prison? All right, so let's address some of these things. Intentions were sexual nature, like I mentioned. Maybe he saw that Libby was unclothed, so that's probably an obvious one. That's where the bullet fell off. I mean, he knew that there was a cartridge that was found at the crime scene. Now, it was, I want to listen to it, but we can't. Apparently, he said that it happened at the bridge. We know that the cartridge wasn't found at the bridge. It was found across the creek where the girls' bodies were found. But, maybe he was already fixated on the cartridge being found. He's like, oh, yeah, I did something with my gun and then my bullet fell off. And he knew that it was an unspent one because they probably drilled in his head over and over again. About the van and getting scared, I already mentioned this. Maybe this was a theory that was, picked up by Dr. Walla, or maybe, maybe not. The cut neck thing, you could see Abby and Libby's injuries. Covered in branches. Again, you can see branches on Abby and Libby. Forcing them across a creek. And I was like, ooh, how would he know that Abby's clothes were damped? But you know what? Maybe he saw where the locations of the bodies were and he knew that you would have to cross that creek in order to get over there. So, not really a huge one. This part was mentioned in state closing and law enforcement, not testified by Dr. Walla from what I researched so far. So I don't know if he confessed to forcing the girls across the street. Oh, I don't think he told. Okay, I think this was mentioned by law enforcement. I don't think he actually told Dr. Walla that he forced the girls across the creek. That part I wasn't really sure about because it wasn't reported by anyone when Dr. Walla was testifying on the stand. However, what I did realize was there are details mentioned, but not like the real crazy details that we're all wondering. He didn't mention Libby and Abby's clothes. Did not explain why Abby was wearing Libby's clothes, right? Did he dress them? Did he forced one of the girls to wear the other clothes because it was easier to get dressed? Or he didn't explain that whatsoever. He didn't explain the reason why the clothes were in the creek. He did not explain how he got the girls to comply to his demands. He didn't explain who he killed first or why the girls were positioned in that way or the sticks. The box cutter and disposing at the CVS dumpster. I'm like, oh, okay, that seems like a pretty specific detail with the box cutter. But again, the guy who did the autopsy, he initially thought there was multiple sharp objects that were involved in this, maybe serrated and then not serrated. He was thinking that maybe the serrated would have come from the box cutter handle, which I already mentioned earlier. But again, it seems like the box cutter theory from the autopsy guy came after Richard Allen's confession. So I'm like, did we really get like the details of this case that only the killer would know? Maybe the van, but there's a dispute of whether or not Brad Weber even drove the van back home that day. Maybe he was servicing his ATM machines. All right. When you're in psychosis, could you remember all those details from discovery? So that's the thing. So I was like, okay, so maybe he was faking psychosis. Like, how did you remember all these details from looking at discovery? I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he did. Was he on and off psychosis? Maybe that's how I remember the discovery details. Did he really confess to Dr. Waller, or did she make it up? How would Dr. Waller know these details, though? Yeah, right? How would she know these details? Did she see the legal documents scattered on the floor? However, she's not able to go inside, his cell. And even if she was inside, there'd be surveillance footage of her, like, looking through his papers and stuff. So, remember, because when they would have their meetings, it wouldn't be in a cell. It would be, like, in a separate room. So it seems like Dr. Waller was able to get, some good details from him. She's presumably not allowed inside the cell. Why was confession not recorded if it was always monitored 24/7? I think I answered my own question. I'm going to answer my own question. I think it's because they were brought into a separate room, and that's like, privilege conversation. Although they were filming the attorney-client one. I don't know. What a weird Westville. Westville is really weird. Very, very weird. All right, y'all, we are almost done. Let's talk about Dr. Polly Westcott. So Dr. Polly Westcott testified basically in rebuttal to Dr. Monica Walla. And Dr. Polly Westcott, remember I told you guys, met with Richard Allen towards closer towards the end of his Westville correction stay. It was after the defense team put in their emergency motion to have him transferred, to stop doing the safekeeping bullshit. Or it's the safekeeping thing. So I say bullshit because I think putting someone in solitary confinement for 13 months, that sounds really fucked. And everyone's constantly monitoring you. You're on cameras. You have no sense of privacy. You're not talking to anyone face to face. Like, yeah, you are talking to the people outside of your door who is reporting on what you're doing. And, they're not supposed to talk to you, actually. You're not supposed to converse with them, and they're not supposed to converse back to you. But I feel like that would drive me nuts. I truly do. And I've had times where, I've had some mental, and I could just see that this would totally fucking break me, but nothing to the extent of what Richard Allen endured, of course. But yeah, mental shit could really fuck you up. All right, so Dr. Polly Westcott met with Richard Allen. I said it was 2023 in August. I'm not too sure when, but she wrote a 127-page report. Let's talk about her. So Dr. Polly Westcott is a neuropsychologist. She talks about forensic psychologists, and I remember this from the Sarah Boone Trail. Forensic psychology is the intersection of psychology and law to help the court understand if condition affects a person's ability to think things through, to testify, etc., things like that. So her 127-page report, she says that Richard Allen had a long history of mental health problems, that she believes that he's not faking it or exaggerating. There's a decline in mental and physical health in prison. She believes that because Richard Allen already had major depressive disorder, remember he was being treated with Prozac, with the high level of stress, that caused psychosis during the confession, she believes. She also said that Richard Allen has a dependent personality disorder. Now it's things are starting to make sense. Okay, he was falling apart because he didn't have his wife Kathy with him, or maybe his mom. He was heavily dependent on maybe both of them. So dependent personality disorder, you fall apart when your family is not physically there. I can sort of relate to that. You need others to feel whole. You can't make a decision alone. Maybe I should see a therapist. Fear of abandonment. Need reaction and reinforcement from others. All right. Delirium is when you don't have an accurate perception of the world around you. Malingering. Of course, they were accusing Richard Allen of malingering. When you're faking symptoms to avoid responsibilities. And then talked about perservations, which is a new word to learn. I've heard of persevere, but I guess I never really thought of perservation. Never heard of that word before. It's when you're overthinking, you're feeling guilty, and you're fixated on confessing to the murders. So she compared the handwriting. Remember the handwriting of the letter that Richard Allen wrote to the court back in November 2022, where he's begging for representation. He's like, hey, I don't have representation. What's going on here? She compared that letter to the 2023 confession letter. And she says that in the November 2022 letter, here, I'm going to show it to you guys really quick so you guys can refresh in your memories. So here is the letter. There's a letter here where he's asking for help. That is his signature. Signature right there. And here's the other one. I am ready to officially confess killing Abby. The signature looks very different. I hope I get the opportunity to tell the families I'm sorry. So she said there are issues. She actually, the reason why she's able to opine about the handwriting is because she's like a handwriting specialist. That's what they do. They, when they're evaluating their patients, they compare handwritings, things like that. And so she said in the November 2022 letter to the court, there was punctuation, there was sentence structure. In the 2023 confession, it shows serious mental decline. It was disorganized in composition. There's no grammar, no punctuation, and the signature is different. She talked about fragmented thoughts, how in psychosis, you have fragmented thoughts and you have non-linear writing. And so she pointed out that Dr. Monica Walla, again, our true crime friend here, Dr. Monica Walla, followed a timeline. So she doesn't know if Dr. Monica Walla took like a bunch of like statements that Richard Allen made out of context and threw it all together, because when you're watching the videos, which the gallery people didn't get to see, but like when you're watching the videos, apparently his thoughts were like very fragmented. It was like boom, 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 boom. And even when we saw the notes of the guards as well, right? The thoughts were kind of like all over the place. They weren't really connected. They didn't really make sense. But however, when Dr. Monica Walla wrote that confession, it was like following a timeline. There was a beginning, there was a middle, and there was like an end. Let's see. She mentioned that Richard Allen was constantly on S watch. Lights were on constantly. That's an issue with sensory deprivation. Now there's like a debate of like how much you can dim the lights, but they said you could dim it, but even the lights are always on. Apparently there was other surrounding prisoners around him that were yelling at him, calling him a baby killer and telling him to KYS. There was part that he mentioned where he was actually fighting off the roaches and the rats for his food. Like I said, apparently Westville, they are shutting down this nasty place. Okay, Westville was old. It was like built back in the day, and it seems like a rundown place. But yeah, there was roaches, there was rats there. He was being watched 24/7. So again, no sense of privacy. He set his own feces. He didn't always have running water. We don't know if the running water, they don't know, like the people that were attending the trial, they don't know if it's because it was some sort of punishment. They don't think so, though. I don't think it was like a punitive thing. They think it was because maybe he was like throwing shit in the toilet. It was clogging it. They had to shut off the water at some point. And also Richard Allen lost substantial amount of weight, which is the picture that we saw, right? The picture of Richard Allen when he was there with this cute little chihuahua. And when he's in, Westville, and he's like, looks like he had like drool in his like shirt, and he's like all skinny looking. They said delirium can be caused by solitary confinement. It's possible that he could have had infection or inflammation. He was drinking toilet water. He was consuming the feces. All right, next we have Dr. Dwanger. Dr. Dwanger worked with Dr. Monica Walla at the corrections facility. So Dr. Deanna Dwanger is a direction of behavior health for the Indiana Department of Corrections. Dr. Dwanger was very concerned about cameras in Richard Allen's solitary cell. She recommended to remove them to improve his health, but that did not happen. She said that the Department of Corrections policy is that any prisoners with a serious mental illness should not be held in solitary confinement for more than 30 days. Richard Allen was there for 13 months. Richard Allen diagnosed as gravely disabled. Now, I feel like everyone was just operating under this bureaucratic system where it's like, well, I mean, we got to keep this guy safe. We're under a safekeeping order. And although it conflicts with someone with a serious mental illness, not supposed to be in solitary confinement for more than 30 days. Well, we took the safety. The safety took, what am I trying to say? Oh my God, Sarah Boone trial and again, not getting sleep this week, covering this. That was more important, the safekeeping thing, which I get, but it's like you have someone that's like in serious mental decline. I don't know. Couldn't they at least like let him out and stuff like that? But no, they were like, no, he had, more. He had more than the other inmates. He had more freedom. But I mean, he was in solitary confinement. I don't know. I feel like the solitary confinement thing just sounds really really fucked for me. She said that Dr. Walla told her that she had a special interest in this case, and that she also recommended some true crime podcasts. Nice. Very, very nice. All right. Next, we got Richard Allen's sister and his daughter testified, and both was asked if, Richard Allen, if they did anything weird. He did anything weird to them, and they both said no. And they were like, would you lie? And they were like, nope. Because remember, the reason why they had to bring the daughter and the sister is because Richard Allen made confessions saying that he did inappropriate things with other people. Then we have Dr. Grazian. Dr. Grazian, I have a note here that he went to Harvard, and he talked about the effects of solitary confinement. Now, when he testified, he was unable to talk about this and how it relates to Richard Allen. He just had to talk about it separately. So he said, in solitary confinement, you are lacking external stimuli. Possible delirium, inadequate ability to maintain a state of alertness. Yep. Now, this is the part where I thought was very interesting in regards to false memories. False memory starts with beliefs, not as images. I think over and over until the belief is true. Real memories, however, are perceptual. You would talk about the smell. You would talk about the sound. So I don't know if Richard Allen saw the discovery, was like, oh my God, I did this. Everyone says I did this. And then he describes that, I commit the crimes. But yeah, I don't know. We don't have like the super mega details, like the sensory part of it, right? If he mentioned that, Dr. Wall just didn't document it, maybe. He says a long time in solitary, you can become delirious. You can have problems with memory, smearing feces, being naked, acting out sexually. Very, very common, he says. All right. And then Dr. Eric Warren, we already addressed this in regards to I actually didn't know this. I thought whenever I would watch trials and we would listen to like the forensic, the comparing the ammo, like I thought that was like some solid science. I remember I kept hearing like, oh, this is like silly science, like it's like fake science. I think like a couple trials that we covered, I was like, yeah, maybe people were just saying that. But I'm hearing it more and more often now. So yeah, that's a very interesting thing. So again, he mentioned that, you're comparing apples to oranges. And, there are some labs that were certified that have been suspended because they couldn't really tell the difference between, there was like these characteristics. I forgot what the 3 characteristics are. Shit, I had them somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't have it right here. But she was basically saying at the crime scene, it was an unspent round. And how Richard Allen, you can't replicate the marks when you're cycling it. You can only replicate the marks when you're firing it. And that's not what happened there. So I had issues with that as well. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of weird. All right. Now, this is, I think, like the last day for the defense when they are presenting their case in chief. So we had Stacey Aldridge who testified. Stacey Aldridge was like, if you did a full extraction of the phone, that is the best thing to do. However, a full extraction was not done of the phone. I don't know why. A different type of extraction was done by a Sergeant Butter, and she said that was not the best extraction. A full extraction of the phone was not done until October 17. Again, the murders happened February 13, right? Full extraction wasn't done until way later, and by that point, it was probably too late because the phone has been shutting on and off. Whenever you turn the phone on and off for the extraction, you're essentially losing data every time. And then what I remembered was, apparently, when they first got the phone, they didn't instruct it right away. They went through the phone, going through the apps, the pictures and all that stuff. And it's like, as you're doing all that, you're slowly rewriting over old data. So they actually did not have the last shut off data was not in the log. Because the weird thing with Libby's phone, now let's talk about the phone now. Weird stuff with Libby's phone. So aside from being found underneath Abby, it was by his shoe. I don't know if they were trying to protect the phone from it being found. But the weird thing with Libby's phone. So Libby's phone, I believe it was. There is a halt of activity from shit. Oh fuck. I lost my spot. I'm sorry. There's a loss of there's nothing happening with Libby's phone from, I think, after 2:31. So after 2:31, No action from Libby's phone. Again, she took the video of the bridge guy at 2:13. We don't have, after 2:31, no activity. From 2:32 to 5:45, there's been no evidence of it being shut off. But again, the log was written over because somebody had turned the phone on and off, law enforcement. At 5:45, apparently there is a call shown pinging in. It shows that the call was disconnected. At this point, I think AT&T is trying to ping the phone, but it's unsuccessful. Defense team, this expert found that at 5:45, a headphone wire was inserted, like a wired headphone inserted. At 6 p.m., there was a voice message, but again, that wasn't delivered until February 17. So again, it seems like she either has no cell data or the phone was like shut off. We don't know. They have a record from that night, 10:32, an audio output N. So headphone aux unplugged. Really weird. People are like, okay, so how could this have happened? Maybe, there was some water that got in there because they were crossing the creek. Maybe that fucked with, the audio output information. Maybe there was some dirt that got in there, possibly. But here's the thing. There's no experiment that was ever done. There's no research on this. They were able to the state got their expert to go back on the stand. And he's like, well, I did a Google search and I saw on Apple that, water and dirt could affect the audio output stuff. And it's like, well, do you have like peer review research or these things that you would normally rely on? It's like, no. Google says, Apple says. But the thing is that I remember, I think the state expert was unable to determine whether or not the phone could have been damaged by water. It was back in 2017. I was like, yeah, you can totally find that out. Because I remember back then when with Apple, right? If you had their, if you want to do like their warranty or their insurance thing, I forgot which one it was. When you would bring their phone in to claim the warranty, the first thing they would do is check to see if there's water damage. There's a way we would just take the phone, bring it to the back really quick, and see if there's like water damage. And I remember they did that back then. So I'm pretty sure they would have been able to check to see if there's water damage on this phone. I don't know. Maybe small town. Maybe they didn't have access to all the best. I mean, they also worked with the FBI though. At some point, FBI was on this case until they were forced to be off the case by the state. But yeah, I don't know. This whole headphone thing, it was like a huge like, oh. So I think the headphone thing was mentioned because I think the defense is trying to say that like, oh, maybe Abby and Libby were brought to a different area. Maybe they were murdered elsewhere. But again, like that's something that I don't know if I really believe that because I feel like it would show the cell phone moving, unless a person had like a Faraday bag with them, put the phone in there. It would show that like, I mean, even with that, wouldn't it still show like movements and steps if the phone is like moving around? Wouldn't that still be logged internally? I don't know. I have a hard time believing that they were abducted and moved to a different location and then brought back. Another reason why I have a hard time believing that as well is because, well, if you were to bring the girls back, why bring them back to the area where they're abducted? That's going to be the first place that law enforcement is going to be looking, and people were out there searching. Like, how did they bring the bodies back without having anyone see, right? Or why would they even want to bring the bodies back to the same place and do the whole laying ritual stick thing? Like, why not just do it somewhere else? There's a whole wooded area out there. So that to me just didn't make sense. I don't know, if I was a jury, I would be like, this is a tough one. It's a tough one. But I think the headphone thing, I would just have to attribute it to like, oh yeah, maybe it's just dirt, maybe it's just water, maybe there's a electrical error thing. I don't know. But apparently the state knew about this and they didn't bring it up. It wasn't until 4:53 or 4:33 a.m. I don't know. I have two times because there's two people giving me conflicting times. That Libby's phone at some point receives like a barrage of texts, and they don't know why that happened. And I'm just thinking it could probably just be because, at some point her phone lost service. Maybe her phone lost service and it finally just got service and all the texts just came in all at once. But yeah, the headphone thing, definitely very, very, very weird. It's a weird case, you guys. A very weird case. Let's see. We had someone who came back on the stand to testify for the state. And at this point, they weren't calling the solitary confinement solitary confinement anymore. They're calling it a one-man cell. Like that makes it sound much better. It's a one-man cell. And then he mentioned that Richard Allen when he was in Westville, Wabash, and finally he was actually transferred to Cass County. Yay! I think that's where they wanted him to be ultimately. They said that it was all a one-man cell, you know, it was all still in solitary, and that the conditions were the same. But Richard Allen still confessed at Westville. But I'm like, is that really a good thing? Because you're still in solitary confinement. Maybe you're still kind of going a little bit crazy. They try to bring in that like a Cass County. Richard Allen was like having a meltdown. I think his like mom, sister, or wife was removed from the phone list, and I was just not very happy about that. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm telling you guys, lots of crazy stuff. But let's go back to the beginning of the video. Let's see. What did I say? What did I say about this? All right. Number 1, video of Hero. Oh, it's just dinner time soon. That's why. Number 1, we've got a video of the killer. It's hard. I mean, it could look like Richard Allen, but at the same time, I don't know. It could look like him. It could look like him. There's audio where you can hear the voice. I don't know what Richard Allen sounds like. I have no fucking idea. But I think people that were in the courtroom were like, yeah, it could possibly be him. However, when you're manipulating the audio, like how do we know you're not manipulating the audio in a way that makes it sound like Richard Allen, right? That's another thought as well. But maybe there's a way for them to manipulate audio without forcing it to sound like the suspect. I don't know. Matching ammo from the crime scene. I mean, again, you're comparing a unspent cartridge with one that was fired, and you're saying, oh, it's the same thing. The cell phone activity or the lack of, I mean, the time frame would fit with, you know, the witnesses and Richard Allen saying that he was there. If you're picking apart a story with, if Brad Weaver was driving by, like all that could possibly fit with the cell phone activity stopping, and presumably that the girls, by the time it was like 2:30, that they were already murdered and there was no movement. Maybe. The Google searches, honestly didn't think it was a huge deal. Like I thought maybe 2 of the searches were like kind of weird, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't think they're bad enough. The confessions to multiple people. Oh gosh, I just think I feel like I need to listen to it for myself. Like I said, I'm listening to other people. The confessions. I mean, the solitary confinement thing to me is a huge issue. It's a huge issue. I think it's possible he could have gone crazy. I think it's possible he could have also faked it. I think it's possible that, you know, maybe he had moments of lucidity where he was not in psychosis and he was, you know, he was genuine in those confessions. But I would have wished there was more details about the confession, like more details, because you know we had a lot of questions about the clothes, the arrangement, how the sticks were arranged, how both girls were able to be kept under wraps. You know, like I don't know. Let's see, the multiple eyewitnesses. So again, you know, it seems like the eyewitnesses never really matched Richard Allen. And then, you know, what's interesting is that when they're on the stand, the state didn't ask any of those eyewitnesses to identify, is this the man that you saw at the trail? No one said that. It wasn't until the man who first interviewed Allen, Richard Allen, that he identified him. But everyone else, they didn't ask, like, oh, is this the guy that you saw on the trail? So I thought it was interesting as well. But it's possible that they could have seen Richard Allen, but just didn't exactly have the clothing down correctly or the descriptions of the looks down. I don't know. It just seems like it was just all over the place. Richard Allen admitting to being in the area when the murders happened. Again, I don't know if he said that he was there from 1:30 to 3:30, or if they're like, oh, you know, when were you on the trails? And he was just like, oh, you know, I got there between 1:30 to 3:30, but maybe he could have, like, that was when he got there, not when he necessarily stayed there the entire time. I don't know. Like, that's why we need to have recorded confessions. Okay. We need to have recorded confessions. We need to have recorded interviews. It all needs to be interviewed, because people, when you're writing notes, like sometimes people, there's mistakes that happens all the time. Like how many times do you guys go to a restaurant, you order something and the mistake happens, right? Or like they forget something. Like mistakes happen all the time. I think they need to be recorded. Always got to be recorded. Same thing with like the interactions with like Karen Reed, you know, none of it was recorded. The interviews weren't recorded. Nothing was recorded. Him having multiple phones, knives, cell phones found. Okay, so having the knives, I didn't think it was a big deal. You got knives, you're a fisherman, you know, and if you weren't a fisherman, I don't think it was a big deal anyways. Multiple cell phones, yeah, that's kind of weird. But because he had flip phones, I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe he just had a habit of just keeping old phones as well. But I will say it is very fucking weird that the 2017 cell phone was not there. That is really weird. It is not there. And then also when they found the that one cartridge in the safekeeping box, yeah, that's pretty fucking weird as well. That is weird as well. Oh man, this was a very interesting case and very unfortunate that the judge did not allow cameras in the courtroom, because a lot of people, I don't know, things like this, everyone needs to be able to see, everyone needs to be able to watch. Because, your description of how things happen may be completely different than how someone else may see it. People's notes may be wrong. Like there were times where I had conflicting dates and notes and I had to rewatch other sources to see if I could find a day that matches up correctly. I'm trying to think, what else is there? I'm sure probably when I go to bed tonight, I'm going to think about, I forgot about this or I forgot about that. But if I do, I'll just mention it in the stream, I guess. But yeah, I wanted to cover this Richard Allen case because it's very interesting. And, honestly, when I first heard about this, I was pretty pissed. I was pissed about hearing about the solitary confinement. And I was very pissed about having Dr. Monica Waller, this person who covered true crime, she was treating him and she was getting his confessions. I'm just like, oh gosh, because for me, it's like, don't mess up the trial, okay? Because when the trial happens, a lot of things are going to end up being, the jury's not going to think you're credible because it's like, X, Y, and Z. It's like, let's just keep it clean as possible, right? Like when we had Michael Proctor was like, oh yeah, like I didn't disclose this and this because blah, blah, blah. It's like, why did you just recuse yourself? Like, come on now. Why put the investigation to jeopardy? Just like stuff like that. Oh gosh. But I mean, she wanted to know. She wanted to be a part of the case, Very, very crazy. Super awful. But at the same time, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh man, it seems like it fits the timeline. It seems like they did see him. It seems like he could have done it and he confessed. So wild case. I go back and forth a lot on this. If I was a jury, in my opinion, I just don't think I don't think it's beyond a reasonable doubt. What's interesting about this case, or about this court, this jurisdiction, is that I'm trying to remember if I can phrase it correctly. So if you don't find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to say not guilty. Okay? You find him not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to say not guilty. However, if you do find him beyond a reasonable doubt, you could vote guilty. You don't have to. It's like, that's really weird. So a lot of other commentators were like, yeah, so technically it's like telling the jury, okay, well, if you find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't have to follow the law. You can just be like, okay, well, I could just say not guilty, right? I don't know. That to me is weird. Very, very weird. Because usually it's like, okay, well, if you find someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must convict. But this one's like, you don't have to convict. Super odd. And what else is there? I just had these like really random stuff just happening, or random thoughts that I have about this case that I just think about. And, after the Sarah Boone stuff, I was like super tired, but dude, I got so entrenched into the Delphi stuff. I think I consumed more hours of the Delphi stuff than I did with the Sarah Boone stuff. So before I end this, I want to talk about all the people that covered this, all the YouTubers that went there to cover this, all the news outlets that covered this. Definitely check them out, because I'm going to name everything that I looked at. And then I think I looked at some more, but these are the ones that I mostly looked at. And you know what? There might be some people on this list that I definitely don't agree with, but I think it's always a good idea to listen to opposing theories, listen to people that you don't agree with, or listen to people that you might not like, because it's good to hear different opinions. So I think Andrea Barkhart did a really good job with the coverage. She had super, super detailed notes. However, you can tell visibly she was very frustrated with the judge, with, how things were being done and how the defense attorneys, she believed they were being treated very unfairly. But I really appreciate her coverage of that, because her notes are so detailed. Like, she had so much information, and, I really like watching her content. I watch, if you guys want to watch like maybe shorter, like if you don't watch like 5-hour streams, WTHE, that's like a news station. There's like Bob Siegel. I really like the attorney that they brought on to talk about this, because a lot of stuff that she was saying, I was like agreeing. I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah. Like, I agree with the attorney. I forgot her name. I think her name was it Katie maybe? But WTHE, they did like 45-minute recaps each day. I really like them if you want something that's like shorter. Harvard Lawyer Lee was also there as well, did a coverage of this. And Hidden True Crime also as well did coverage of this as well. Watched a little bit of Nancy Grace YouTube. Well, I actually watched a decent amount of that, because, I just want to hear, what she was thinking. If you guys want to read instead, there's Base in Lafayette. They have a Substack where, you can read about the case each day. Those are the main ones that I was like watching. And then there were some other ones that I was reading. Oh, like Wayne, WANE.com. Gray Hughes Investigates. Watched a little bit of that. And then there were some other ones like that I would cross-reference information with like Fox 59, with Russ McQuaid, WRTV. There's a Journal and Courier, JC Online. That's their website. And yeah, those are main people that I watch for the coverage of this. And, you know, I would not be able to cover this in person because I can't. I go crazy if I don't have a good amount of sleep. I can't sit long periods of time, especially without eating, going to the bathroom. I have IBS. I have all the issues, Ed. So I really admire all the people that showed up in person and watched the trial. And, you know, there's line sitters there. Like, that's pretty fucking amazing. So huge credit to all those people. And that's where I got a lot of this information from. Because like I said, you know, it's very disappointing that we weren't able to watch the trial live. Hopefully they will release the audio recordings. I don't think they will. It seems like this judge is very, very strict. But, you know, maybe we'll get to we'll have the audio recordings release and we'll see what happens. So at this point, the jury is still in deliberations. What do you guys think? Do you think that they're gonna, what do you guys think about this whole thing? It's crazy because I feel like although I went through everything, a lot of stuff that I'm missing is like the interactions within the courtroom. And I don't know, there's just a lot. There's a lot here. A lot. So I wasn't able to cover in this video, but you know, I'm getting hungry. It's getting really hot. I need to take a shower. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a good weekend. And let me know what you guys' thoughts are about this. Feel free to join the Discord. We do have a true crime section. You know, if you guys want to join, feel free. Post about this case or other cases if you like. And there's also non-true crime related stuff as well if you're tired of true crime. But feel free to join the Discord. And yeah, that's about it, y'all. I hope you guys have a good one. We'll see what the jury decides. All right, y'all. Have a have a good one, and I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna go feed Shiro. Oh yes, we gotta feed you, Shiro, right? We gotta feed you. No, he doesn't want to come up. No, he doesn't want to come. He just wants food. Oh, you see his butt though. Hi, baby. All right, guys. I'll see you guys. Take care.